module. And then the most importantly, somebody need to teach me how to read the first word properly. Chatham House Rule.
Rose, Chatham.
That's correct. Chatham House Rule. That's
okay, so I'll be
Guide.
reading this house rule briefly, and then some pointers. Keep yourself muted, type your questions, and so on and so forth, and passing it over to Prof. Moshidi after that. Okay, let me stop sharing.
Okay. You will call upon Yadrina for the opening speech, right?
Yep. Dr. Yazrina and Prof. Zaini. And then passing it over to you.
Yeah. Okay. For the speakers, Prof. Roslan is not here. Yeah. For the speakers, we start the first session with about 10 minutes. Basically, don't talk about the implication yet. That's for the second part, right? What are the implications for policy, for other institutions, and so on. First part about presenting your data, your experience, how the leadership responds to the predicament, the pandemic we have. Okay, so stop at that for 10 minutes, and then after your presentation, we don't have Q&A, but people can always put in their questions through the chat box, and then Doria will collect those questions, and when everybody have presented, then we look at that question and see which are relevant to which speaker. So you respond to those. Yes, Doria will explain later to the participant, right?
We will explain to them.
So we hope to finish in about 1 hour with Q&A and everything, and then we take a break for about 15 minutes, and then we move to the second part. The second part will be basically where you're looking the implication, what are the lessons learned for the system, for the institution, and so on and so forth. That's basically the second section. So it's about 10 minutes around that, 10 minutes each, and then followed by Q&A again through the chat box. We are not taking oral question because some people may be what do you call it, very woody in
enthusiastic.
Yes. So that will, and we may not be getting the question properly. It's better they ask a question to the chat box, and then Doria can sift through and see which are relevant, which are very interesting, and so on. Then we respond as usual. Okay. Maybe if we have time towards the end, the speakers may have the last word, your final say after your data, after your policy implication. What are basically the takeaway from this session from the perspective of the leadership? Okay. Remember, this is a leadership webinar, so focus on the leadership issues. Okay.
Okay, Prof.
Everything okay? Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, should be fine. Yep.
Rose.
Yes, Prof.
Rosalie,
Yeah.
you try to get hold of Prof. Roslan PA.
I've just messaged Tasnim to do that. Apparently, Prof is giving the final touches to his PowerPoint.
Okay. All right.
Like what that late Dato' Said always say, we only have one prayer as academics. Thank God for the last minute.
Yeah, that's why there's no need to put in the presentation to us now, because you may want to change it in the last minute. Only the case. Okay, so we have 15 minutes to go before. Anything you want to say?
No, nothing. Just good morning to everyone. And I think we may have time for coffee, I think. As we wait till 9 o'clock.
You know all the speakers, right? Guide
Yes,
sharing, yeah.
yes.
We've met before.
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
met.
now
I
he
look
has a-
slightly different, Guy. Oh, is
Yeah,
it
we-
Guy or Guy?
Guy.
Oh,
Guy.
okay. I see. I thought it's the French Guy thing.
Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, Guy makes me sound much more exotic than I am. So it's Guy, I'm afraid.
Because I have a friend whose spelling is the same, but we call him Guy Martini. Yeah, because it's French. Anyway.
Yeah, he's French, I think. Yeah.
I've probably bumped into
Pandip, yeah.
Mr. Gurdar.
Yes, yeah, Pandip.
Yes, but we have not.
Pandip.
Yeah, we have not sort
Yeah.
of spoken face to face, I suppose.
Yep. Yes.
Thank you for doing this.
Sure.
You have not met Prof. Roslan before, right?
Yeah, is he the new TNC?
I'm not the new. He has been around for quite a while.
Oh, okay.
But this is second year, I think.
As a?
Yeah.
His second
As
year
a
as a?
TNC.
Oh, he is the TNC, yeah?
Yeah. TNC for Lestari sustainability. We have
right.
TNC for sustainability and institutional development or something like that. Okay.
Thanks
Rosalini.
Thanks for doing this also, Doria.
Welcome. Sorry, breakfast.
Rosalini, anything before we?
No, Prof. I forgot to share with you something yesterday. The mission finished late. I'm going to just send it to you on your WhatsApp group, yeah, Prof?
What is that?
The biodata, the brief biodata.
Okay, I have the biodata, but Prof. Roslan one is a bit long.
I'm sending something to you, sir.
Okay.
Just a short one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So macam saya hantar tu suruh jawab lah untuk hantar Facebook.
I got it here, Rosalini. Okay. Did you update your CV or you using the same one you sent me yesterday?
Same one I sent you yesterday.
Same one, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't change my personality between yesterday and today. I wanted to. I couldn't.
All right. Okay, so I'm waiting for Prof. Roslan's CV.
I shared on WhatsApp already.
WhatsApp, yeah? Okay. But I'll check it. So time for coffee, I guess.
Sorry, Prof. I just wanted to add something. There will be 2 streams today for this conference. One is through the Zoom that Prof. Zaini has. Basically, that Zoom only allows us to have 100 participants at any one time, which was our maximum capacity. So, but we hit 100 on Monday already. So through ACAP, we have now actually we also have the live stream on Facebook, ACAP Facebook. So we should have about 130 participants in total. So there will be 2 chat boxes that would have questions coming to us. ACAP chat box information will be shared with Doria by somebody by the name of Zakba from ACAP. And then Doria would actually have a look at those chat box on Zoom. Yeah.
Okay.
And read the questions.
Did you have a look at the list of participants? Where they're from? Where they're coming from? Rosalini?
Sorry, Prof. Yes. So about 75% are from about 70% are from the public universities, give and take. About 25% from the private universities, And about the rest, I mean, give and take about 4%, I think, will be from the from other universities or other organizations like Australian High Commission. We have Singapore, colleagues from Bangladesh, from where else? From Thailand. So a bit of Asian flavor as well into this.
There's somebody from Australia, I think. I don't know what that is. AUS.
Yes, there's someone from Australia.
Australia, yeah.
Yeah,
Australia.
that is it's linked to Australian High Commission in Malaysia. I think the person is Sri something. Yeah. So we have, so that's our combination of people at the moment. So about a quarter of the participants are Pendapat members, and the rest are non-Pendapat members.
Any participant from the ACAP module series attendees?
Yes, from TEP about 27, I think 22 or 27, around there.
There's ACAP trainees, right?
Yes, ACAP trainees, yeah.
And they are from both public and private universities. They are holding positions.
Government link universities, public and government link universities.
Okay, and they are basically holding position in those universities, I think.
They are bursars and registrars or assistant bursars and registrars around that level.
Okay, all right.
So this thing will be very relevant for them. All the areas will be quite relevant for them. Yeah.
Okay, so in view of the fact that we have international participants, so everything should be in English, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Jangan tersasul guna bahasa Malaysia. So everything should be in English. Okay, Prof. Roslan.
Okay, sorry for joining a bit late. We have a small technical glitch.
Yeah. Probably you can turn your laptop to your left because of the glare. The light on your screen from the other side. Yes, much better. Okay. All right. Okay. So as I was briefing everybody, we have 10 minutes per session. Okay, Prof. Ruslan. And then followed by Q&A. So the first session is basically data sharing, your experience. No more. We're not discussing about policy implication yet. That's for the second session after the break. Question will be taken through the chat box. We are not taking oral question because that could be time consuming. So Doria will sift through those chat box questions, and Doria will highlight to me what are those questions which are the relevant one we need to address. Then I will indicate the relevant presenter, speaker, to respond to those questions. If there are specific questions to specific speaker, otherwise it's a common question where everybody can respond. After the break, the same. We'll do the same procedure, presentation, 10 minutes, but basically it's about policy implications and what are the takeaway, our lesson learned from what we have discussed, and then followed by a question and answer through the chat box too. And then depending on the time that we have, you have a last say before we end the session, the webinar. Okay, it's a 3 hours. I break it in such a way that if you have to go away for 5 minutes, you can do that. So rather than have a 20-minute session where you can move, it's tough for us and the participant at the same time. Okay, Prof. Ruslan? Okay, yeah. So
Prof, Yes was here before. We haven't said hello to her.
Where I don't. Yes. Yes, I said hello. I said if you're not here, I'm not going to speak to you anymore. Yes, Rina. Yes, you have the the introductory remarks. Okay. On behalf of AKEF, 5 minutes. Okay. Doria will prompt you to begin your speech at 9:05. Okay. What's the time now? 5 minutes to 9?
Prof. Moshidi, just one question. Doria, how would you prompt us when it comes to, I forgot to think about it, sorry. How would you prompt us before, let's say 2 minutes or 1 minute before before our time is up?
Oh yeah, good question. I haven't thought of it also.
Let's have something written up and then just show it. 5 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sure.
Yeah, just watch out for Doria. Maybe Doria can do a hand signal or something, you know. I like the teddy bears at the back, Doria.
Yeah, I can just use this fellow and say, here you go.
Yes,
Time's
yes.
up.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody helping you there, Doria? No.
Sorry?
You have anybody helping you there?
No. Working from home. So
do we need somebody else as a timekeeper? We can always get one more person, or no need, Doria?
tak payahlah. No need.
All right.
I think when people are very engrossed, sometimes you just have to say to jump in. I tend to not
okay, guys, time's up.
waving or whatever because I'm so engrossed in what I'm thinking and speaking. So sometimes it's just a little nudge. Just come in and say, yeah, we'll stop there for now, or 2 more minutes, or 5 more minutes.
Okay, Datuk Nurzaini, Prof. Roslan is here. You have not met Prof.
Yes.
Roslan before.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam.
Terima kasih sudi menjadi panel. Thank you for
It's
doing
my pleasure to share your same experience. Yes.
So I think Sabrina wants to close the room, Prof, so that she can actually get people in and then put this live. Okay.
Yep. Before we exit, just to, because I'm sorry, for not being able to join the dry run yesterday because I was in Kelantan on the formal duty. I prepared the presentation as much as I can, but I think I would present almost all of my presentation or the slides on the first half, and then I'll try to conclude. I mean to elaborate on the second part, maybe verbally based on the presentation. So basically, I did not split so-called the two section, but rather just one section. Hopefully, I still can manage to achieve what we plan, in terms of the experience and the response.
Okay, you can present up to the point where you're presenting the experience of USM, and then you stop there, and then during the second session you can have the slide backs to discuss the implementation and policy. Okay. Anybody helping you on the slides there on that side? You have someone there?
I'm on basically teamwork effort. They prepared slide for me, so I just did all the touch up and rearrangement, so that is according to the flow. Of course, we will have a technical people here. Is there any technical glitch?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock. We need to close this and then get on. Please, Prof. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, a very good morning to everyone. We are starting our session in a bit. Let's give us a few minutes to get ready. Organizer from ACAP, are we ready to start? Ready. All right.
I think we are okay. It's just on the Datuk Nurzaini's part. Is she ready?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think we can begin.
Okay. Let us start this session. Assalamualaikum, a very good morning to everyone. Welcome to the Pendapat Discourse series, the first for this year, jointly organized by ACAP and the Malaysian Society for Research and Higher Education. My name is Doria. I'm a senior lecturer from School of Education, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, UTM, and I'll be your Master of Ceremony for today. Now, it's going to be a very interesting 3 hour of conversations about higher education, leadership in particular, and how are we going to respond to what's going to happen post-pandemic. So we have at current point of time 36 participants with us on Zoom. This particular session is also broadcasted live on Facebook, in particular the ACAP page. So hello to all those who are watching on Facebook ACAP page. So now without much delay, let us pass the session over to Associate Professor Dr. Yazrina Yahya, Deputy Director, Center for Leadership Sustainability, ACAP, to give her opening remarks. Dr. Yazrina.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Doria, our MC for today. Professor Datuk Dr. Nurzaini Azman, President Pendapat. Professor Datuk Dr. Murshidi Sirat, Advisor of Pendapat. Distinguished speakers that we have this morning, and of course, our fellow participants. Yeah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you, and a very good morning to all. Well, I'm Yazrina, the Deputy Director for Center of Leadership Sustainability of ACAP, and I'm here today to represent the Director of ACAP, Professor Dr. Nordin Yahya. He wished to extend his welcome to all the participants and speakers, and wished to extend his apology for not being able to greet all of you today due to unforeseen circumstances. My fellow speakers and participants, I wish to extend a warm welcome to Pendapat Discourse series, and this is a collaborative effort between Pendapat and the Higher Education Leadership Academy, ACAP. The idea of the program is to equip future leaders and the community in the higher education by providing insights on how leaders must respond towards the pandemic that we are currently facing now. Various issues have occurred during the pandemic, and it is essential that leaders of higher learning institutions and every community in the higher learning institutions to look at every aspect in the higher education in order to ensure that the university is able to move forward. I believe this kind of collaboration is important to ensure that leadership topics are discussed and the platform becomes a venue for the academics to enhance their leadership skills and knowledge. And of course, our very huge thanks to Pendapat for organizing and inviting ACAP to be its partner in their first Discourse series. It is hoped that this series will continue with very good topics that will actually benefit the community in the higher education. Ladies and gentlemen, ACAP has sailed through a 14-year journey since its inception, and its capacity of identifying top talents among the 20 public universities, ACAP has profiled 525 academics among the professors, associate professors, and of course the administrators as well, who are incumbent and potential leaders into the National Top Talent Bank based on the ACAP competency model. Now, aside from the profiling the top academics in preparing the leaders for higher institutions, ACAP has also provided the platform for training in various programs related to leadership through its specific training for targeted group or through a more general approach in providing knowledge to a bigger audience. So do take some of your time to take a look at the ACAP's offerings for this year. If in any cases that you're not able to participate in the targeted course, there are also the webinar programs focusing on latest topics related to leadership, which are open to all, such as this collaboration with Pendapat, There are also ACAP Global Series, ACAP in ASEAN, and ACAP Leadership Talk. And for your information, there will be a leadership summit organized in September. So do take time to register and listen to the speakers across the globe discussing on leadership of higher education related topics. Now, I wish to extend my thank you, of course, to the speakers who had spent their time to prepare, to discuss, and to provide their insights, okay, for the program. And of course, the participants who are here today, who are willingly to register and to listen, to gain knowledge from the speakers, and to the Secretariat from Pendapat and ACAP, who have worked endlessly to ensure the success of the program. And to all the participants, it is hoped that you will gain insights and new knowledge that will assist you in leading your institutions, in leading your division, your respective higher institutions, and hoping to see you again at any of the Pendapat or ACAP programs in the future. So for that, ladies and gentlemen, I do hope you enjoy the Pendapat Discourse series, the first series as a start. And thank you very much. And Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you so much, Dr. Yazrina. So now let's hand over the session to Prof. Dr. Nurzaini Azman, Professor of Higher Education, Faculty of Education, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and also the Chair for the Malaysian Society for Research and Higher Education, otherwise known as Pendapat, for her opening remarks. Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Doria. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Eminent speakers, distinguished moderator, respected colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning, everyone. On behalf of Pendapat, I am pleased to welcome you, members of Pendapat, as well as colleagues, to our first Pendapat Discourse series. Just a little introduction to Pendapat. We are a Malaysian society for higher education policy and research development, set up in 2014. As a small NGO association focusing on policies and practices of higher education, we currently have around 100 members. As a young organization, we have made considerable progress, I would say, within a period of 6 years or so. We have conducted various face-to-face and virtual seminars and workshops on current or hot issues in higher education. We have entered into strategic partnerships with Berita Harian for higher education public advocacy, and with ACAP on developing training modules. We have worked with various local universities, IPPTN and the Commonwealth Tertiary Education Facility, for example, as well as with international associations like us, such as the Asia Higher Education Research Association, on seminars and workshops. As an organization that focuses on evidence-based policies and practices, Pendapat will continue to have an important role in providing a more realistic or non-partisan views on how evidence-informed policies and how higher education institutions should incorporate evidence in managing and organizing their institutions. For the next 2 years, the Pendapat Discourse series are organized in a hybrid mode, I hope, as a series of dialogues and input from members and participants on key issues in higher education. We are seeking our members and Pendapat's views on the key areas in which the higher education system, the higher education institutions and staff require support, particularly with regard to policies. Today's discourse is online, as it is in fashion now, but we hope to conduct 1 or 2 face-to-face discussion when things settle down. Today, we have invited you to a discourse entitled Leadership Response to COVID-19 Pandemic. To benefit from the thought leadership for insights on students' experience, staff management, internationalization, and financing higher education. The discourse today is expected to give views on a recovery process of the pandemic. And it could also lead us from a recovery of business as usual, but potentially to a more inclusive and sustainable higher education system and its future. While higher education around the world are dealing with similar global challenges, I believe that our response in Malaysia needs to recognize distinct local impacts and priorities, particularly as a developing country whereby crisis is not affecting all equally. Disadvantaged groups, including women, are forcibly displaced and particularly impacted. Some have been quick to define the current and future situation as a new normal, but I think there is still very little that is known to justify speaking about the new normal at this stage. Too little is known about the virus, and there's a lot of lack of empirical knowledge and how we'll be able to manage the crisis in all sectors, including higher education. But one thing we have for sure is we have the opportunity to draw the right conclusions from the crisis. One of the biggest opportunities today comes from the fact that over decades and through various adversity, higher education has emerged as a tested and longest surviving institutions. Perhaps our national policies on higher education seems to have worked, but needing continuous improvement. But exploiting the crisis in a smart way will allow us to aim for a better normal instead of a new normal. So that, you know, compared to what we see right now and at the peak of the crisis, I suppose the point I'm trying to make is that we should be brave to draw the right conclusions for our context from what we have learned so far and stand strong on our identity and values. The Discourse and other Pendapat series, however, will not just be another talk shop, at least I hope. By the end of the event, we intend to synthesize a set of recommendations to be made public and sent to relevant authorities. And we have our eminent moderator to lead us through this process of policy response. Alternatively, I hope, based on the presentations and feedback, we may come up with strategic leadership strategic outlook for planning of immediate strategic approaches that we hope will enhance higher education values and sustainability. At this juncture, I would like to take the opportunity to thank our eminent speakers, Mr. Guy Perring, the Regional Director of iGraduate, Prof. Dr. Roslan from USM, Dr. Ross from University of Nottingham, Malaysia, and Mr. Gurpardip Singh from Asia Pacific University for agreeing to become panels for Pendapat's first discourse series. I would also like to thank our collaborators, ACAP and the organizing committee chaired by Dr. Rosalini and ACAP's Deputy Director, Associate Professor Dr. Yazrina, for the hard work and effort in planning and coordinating this event. Professor Datuk Murshidi Sirat, Pendapat's advisor, who is widely acknowledged as a higher education expert, has been instrumental in putting together this first discourse program. Thank you also to Dr. Jimmy from Heriot Ward University, Ms. Tasnim from University of Nottingham, Malaysia, and Ms. Sabrina Abdullah, who are working behind the scene for the technical support. In closing, I encourage participants to participate actively, and I wish all of us a successful and productive discourse. Thank you, Dr. Doria, over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Zaini. So before we move on, I think I want to pick a point from what Prof. Zaini mentioned just now. What exactly is new normal? Are we really in the new normal, or we are just pressing pause, looking at things, relaxing for a while because of the pandemic, and then proceeding to what we already know? So hopefully these are the questions that we can, at the very least, get some basic explanation to from our eminent speakers. So now, before I pass the floor over to the moderator, allow me to briefly go through what's going to happen today. You should be seeing a PowerPoint slide in front of you. Let me share the screen. Okay, seems to be dark. Let me share it again. Sorry for the slide error. Okay, you should be seeing a slide. I'm not going to press slideshow so in the event of technical errors. So this session is the Pendapat Discourse series. We're going to discuss leadership response to COVID-19 pandemic within the context of education. As mentioned earlier, and just to briefly recap for those who just joined us, this session is recorded and it is a simulcast on 2 platforms. We're using Zoom as the main platform and Facebook Live, specifically on the ACAP Facebook page. Okay. Now this is the schedule for the whole discourse series today. So we have 2 sessions, what we call round 1 and round 2. Round 1 will happen immediately after this. Basically, we have 4 panelists who will present on 4 distinctive topics related to what we're going to discuss today. We're going to have a break at 10:30 for about 15 minutes. And then we will resume with round 2. Again, every panel we have 10 minutes to present, followed by Q&A for both sessions, and then we will wrap up and close the session for today. Now, this is the most important slide for the presentation. We're going to adopt this Chatham House rule to initiate the discourse for today. So when a meeting or part thereof is held under the Chatham House rule, participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speakers nor that of any other participant may be revealed. So yes, you can share ideas, thoughts, perspectives from this particular discourse series to the public, but please refrain yourself from sharing who the idea or the perspective came from, because this is essentially what Chatham House rules is. Now, finally, please, if you're using a Zoom application, change your view to speaker view for best viewing. We have our panelists with their slides, and then this will be the best view to view the content of the slides. Now, some Zoom functions to take note of. You will see a red button at the right hand side of your screen, bottom right hand side. Please do not click the button. You can only click the button at the end of the session. Please keep yourself muted at all times. If you have questions throughout the session, please type it out into the chat box. Myself and a colleague from ACAP will go through the questions, both on the Zoom platform as well as Facebook Live. And we will consolidate all the questions and pass it over to the moderator, where he will put the questions back to the panelists. So that's all from me. Let me pass over the session to our moderator for today, Prof. Dr. Moshidi Sirat. Up until recently, he was the Director of Commonwealth Tertiary Education Facilities, CTEF, University Science Malaysia. He was also the former Director General of Higher Education for the Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia between 2013 and 2014. That's 2 sentences for you, Prof. Moshidi. So the virtual space is yours. All the best for your panel session.
Thank you, Doria, for the introduction and for the briefing on how we're going to move forward at today's webinar. And thank you to Dr. Ziazina from ACAP for the introductory remarks, and Prof. Datuk Nurzaini, Chair of Pendapat, for the welcoming remark to participants and especially the presenters. Without further ado, let me begin this session. We have 4 speakers. Let me introduce you the first speaker, Mr. Guy Perring. Guy is a passionate about improving the student experience. I think he has been working on student experience for quite a while. He is the Regional Director of Southeast Asia for iGraduate which is part of the Tribal Group, an independent benchmarking consultancy delivering comparative insights for the education sector and assisting institutions in ensuring their students are achieving their objectives in employment and citizenship. Guy is responsible for spearheading the ASEAN operation. He has worked in education for over 25 years in a variety of roles, from teacher to administrator, market researcher to consultant. He previously worked at the British Council for 12 years in a variety of roles and has presented at many international conferences, including Going Global, QS Apple, and the Commonwealth of Education Ministers meeting. His topic, Guy, we talk about student expectation, lesson from COVID-19 student experience survey. He will present his findings on this survey. You have 10 minutes, Guy. Time is yours.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mashidi. And of course, thank you for Pendapat and ACEP for inviting me to present today. In the first 10 minutes, I'm going to go through some data. And as Prof. Mashidi indicated, later on, we'll come back and look at some of the implications of that data. I'm going to now share my screen, which I hope I'm able to do. I'm hoping you can see. Just going to move it into slideshow. And then we'll be in business. Okay, can everyone see the slides? If someone can wave or put thumbs up or something, that's great.
Yep, can see the slide.
Yeah. Wonderful, thank you. Great, so over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to look at the student voice. And as Prof. Nozaini indicated earlier, ACEP is all about evidence-based policy. And for me, from my perspective, one of the most important evidences you need are the views from the students and the student voice. We've been capturing the opinions of the students, certainly since I've been in Malaysia for the last 6 years with iGraduate, and we capture those opinions globally. And I'll be sharing some of that data with you over the next 10 minutes. Just a little bit of background. We were established in 2005. We've run the barometer process, which is the survey that I'm going to talk about today, in over 1,400 institutions across 33 countries. And we've got feedback from a large number of students, nearly 3.7. The student barometer itself, and I need to give you a little bit of background, it's about improving the student experience, it's about understanding student satisfaction, it's about hopefully enhancing recommendations so students will recommend your institution to others. The key thing about it is it's a global survey. We benchmark across the world. So institutions in Malaysia can compare themselves with institutions in Australia, institutions in the UK, etc. And the survey covers all students, international and domestic, across all levels of study, both exchange and degree-seeking students as well. And hopefully it gives you insight into recruitment, retention, and informing your strategies. And obviously today we'll be looking specifically at how the survey across COVID-19 and how that can inform strategies moving forward. I won't read through this slide, but just to give you an idea of the scope of the survey, covering decision-making in terms of why students choose a particular institution. For international students, their arrival and how they're welcomed. The learning encompasses a lot, obviously, but we want to understand what learning outcomes students see as a key, and the living in terms of accommodation, food, cost issues, etc. Particularly important during COVID. And also the support areas, which will differ from institution to institution, but obviously most of you will have career support, mental health provision, etc. And also, as I've mentioned, finally, what makes a student recommend your institution and how can they become ambassadors for your institution. And what we believe is that current generation of students make study decisions with the world of work in mind. And we'll look later at those implications in terms of the world of work and their ability to get employment after their careers, their study rather. What has changed then since we've been running the surveys? This is global data. On the left, you can see the 2014 data, where students said that the most important thing in deciding where to choose an institution was the reputation, the specific course, the research quality. More and more we've seen now that the future career impact is one of the key reasons that students will choose an institution. And that's both locally, regionally, and globally. These statistics apply in Malaysia as much as they do elsewhere. So that future career impact is absolutely key. And we'll need to bear that in mind, particularly moving forward, particularly as the issue of graduate employability will become even more acute after we come through the pandemic. We need to understand what attracts students, what students will be recommending, what makes them recommend. So in terms of their influences, again, we've seen some changes, 2014-19, we've seen the websites becoming more important and education agents becoming important. Education agents more so, obviously, in Malaysia in the private sector, but increasingly in the public sector, for education agents. Let's have a look in the 2020 data, and this I think is where it becomes really interesting. We'll look at the data set, we'll look at pre-COVID, and we'll look at now, and make. You'll have the ability to ask me some questions, both in the chat and also after the other presentation. Let's have a look at the data. As I said, the survey is an intelligence survey, so it covers all those aspects. We're looking particularly also at happiness, value for money, and particularly this year in terms of the institution COVID response. What was their response to the COVID crisis in terms of communication, and how was online learning received by? So overall, how satisfied were you with the university's response to COVID-19? And you can see that 79% were satisfied. I think that's pretty impressive. And I think what we found, and particularly in Malaysia, what we found is that students were very impressed by the levels of communication, the clear communication. You perhaps have the advantage in Malaysia that you have the ministry who was giving quite clear signals, and individual institutions were not sending mixed signals. There was a consistency in the message. And also later we'll see how institutions responded in terms of accommodation and in terms of online learning. So I think 79% is actually particularly good. As I said, there was satisfaction with both the communication. 78% of students were satisfied with the communication. In Malaysia, it was slightly higher. Because as I said, the communication was much clearer from your universities, because I think the message was much clearer. And in conversations with institutions, we've also had the experience of SARS beforehand. And so you're kind of geared up for that already. But the communication has been very good from universities, and the online learning experience, the satisfaction rates again are particularly high. Although, and we'll discuss this later, I think that's going to change. I think students were understanding of the need to shift to online, but I think moving forward, they will be less so if the quality is not there as well. Looking in more depth in terms of the information, and on the left, you can see the various criteria, online learning resources, high satisfaction, organization of lectures, high satisfaction. So I should say the dark green is very satisfied, the light green is satisfied. Organization of tests, exams, less impressed with travel restrictions, but of course that was in some senses out of the institution's control in terms of being able to cross borders. Well-being support, again, high levels of satisfaction with well-being support. And again, moving forward, I think that's going to be a key issue. Physical health advice, again, high levels of satisfaction. And people were not necessarily as happy with financial support. That is always the case, but obviously there were students both across the globe and within Malaysia who were struggling with various financial constraints, and also access to the appropriate devices, suitable environment to study. How satisfied were you with the following aspects of your online experience? And again, I won't go through this in detail, just remembering that the dark green is overall very satisfied, the light green, you can see generally feelings are that the online experience was good, but please notice that the group work inevitably has been a challenge. And, you know, I think as technology improves, hopefully institutions will embrace that technology and bring the ability to embrace group work within the online learning experience. So that's the end of part one. I've got a little bit more data to share in part two about COVID, but mainly my part two presentation will be about the implications for the university. So I think I've kept to my 10 minutes, perhaps 9 minutes, in fact, slightly. So Morshidi, I'll hand you back the screen. I'm going to stop my sharing. Back to you, Morshidi, or back to you, Dora. I'm not sure. Morshidi, I think you're still on mute.
Prof. Morshidi, you're on mute. Prof? Prof. Morshidi, we can't hear you.
If there are any questions while we're waiting, if there are any questions in the chat, then please feel free to ask them.
Hello. Okay.
Thanks, Morshidi. Sorry.
Right. Thank you guys for the presentation.
Pleasure.
To participants, you can post your questions on the first part of Guy's presentation at the chat box, and Doria will have a look at it and sift through those questions, which we present to Guy at the end of the fourth presentation. Okay. The next presenter, Assalamualaikum, Prof. Is Prof. Professor Mat Roslan Hashim. Prof. Roslan is currently a Deputy Vice Chancellor, Sustainability and Institutional Development portfolio at USM, and he is also a professor at the School of Physics, USM. He has served USM for almost 23 years, and he has research interests in nano, opto, electronic, in semiconductor materials. Over the years, Professor Mat Roslan has been very actively involved in voluntary works that impacted USM community, Malaysian society, and international community at large. More importantly, during this pandemic era at USM, he is also the chairman of the Nerve Center at USM. The Nerve Center is a central logistic body coordinating staff and student movement during pandemic COVID-19, and he was and is still the chair since the beginning of COVID-19. Yeah. So Prof. Roslan will speak on leading staff organization and support during the pandemic area. Let's give the time to Prof. Roslan, 10 minutes for the first part of your presentation. Okay, Prof. Roslan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning to all the panels, speakers, as well as participants and in this webinar. Thank you, Prof. Morshidi, for introduction. So bear me a few seconds. I try to share my slides. So share slide dulu kan? Sorry. So how do we know? Can you see my slides?
Yet to see.
Yet to see.
Yeah, it's not there yet.
I need to close it. So now I can share you. Share screen. Can you see?
Yep.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm done. All right. In terms of this. Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. So before I begin, I would like to give you a proper perspective of USM scenario. I'm speaking from USM main campus. We have branches in a few places. USM is a main campus, and then we have medical campus in the East Coast, Kelantan. We have engineering campus in Nibong Tebal, which is about 40 kilometers from the main campus. And we have also IPPT, which is in Bertam, also 40 kilometers from the main campus. And yes, there's 4 campuses altogether, including main campus. So these campuses containing about 10,000 staff overall, 4,000 in main campus, and the biggest is in Kelantan, which is the medical campus, amounting to 5,280 staff. And then the student in normal time 30,000, 20,000 undergraduate and 10,000 postgraduates. So putting the student aside, if you see the staff alone, we are managing 10,000 staff. So when the pandemic hits, we quickly take the responsibility to manage the movement of the staff and student as well. And then if you look at the history, the nation declared first lockdown on 18 March, but we have our mobilized team, which is called Nerve Center, we started 2 days earlier. So I'm the chairman at the moment. Of course, we are reporting direct to the VC. So I'm going to, with that perspective, I'm going to share my slide further, inshallah. Okay, as I mentioned just now, sorry, the slide somehow disoriented. Anyway, so the Nerve Center, which combining where we hold a meeting twice a week on the Tuesday and Thursday, combining all the campus. So under the Nerve Center, in terms of mobilization, it can be divided into the section by the registrar, which governing the staff movement, and Deputy Vice Chancellor on the student movement. In response to COVID, also, of course, we work together with the MKN, Majlis Keselamatan Negara SOP, and we translated on the ground in order to mobilize our staff. And this following, we adopt 30-70 policy, whereby only 30% of the staff out of 10,000 across the campuses should come into the campus in order to keep the distance. So the rest of 70% will adopt work from home policy. But we have few departments, a security department, and Pusat Sejahtera, which is the clinic and the health matters, Pusat Sejahtera, and the nerve center, and MPRC, the department in media and public relation, and then on the divisi Hal Ehwal Praja or student affairs, and IMCC, International Mobility and Collaboration Center. This one to deal with the international student, and we have a housing and accommodation center, and then this is unit keselamatan dan kesihatan pekerja, which is health and security of the staff. So all these department are full force. They come 100% because they are considered frontliners. We will not jeopardize the safety of the human in our territory. So this department, in terms of the workforce, they have to come 100%. So one of the problem that we face, or the challenges, this is what I mean. I tend to blend all the challenges and how we respond. But of course, the second half we can elaborate more. So immediately when we have our student so-called quote-unquote trapped in the campus, we have no choice but to find the fund. So we launch the fund with USM seed money, 250,000, and then we open the account, and then we also make it a compulsory, or to our staff to cut some of their salary, and then alhamdulillah, for the first 3 months on the onset of the pandemic, April, May, June, we managed to collect 1.5 million. So this money will be used to mobilize, of course, the student as well as the staff. And this is some of the money that we managed to get in total, and then how we use them to mobilize the student as well as the staff underneath when they are being hit by the pandemic. And then interesting part also, we have a mosque in the campus which belong to the society, which belong to what we call the qarya, which is belong to the local also. So we have no choice to open the gate for them to offer the, especially Friday prayer, and following the SOP set by the Majlis Agama Pulau Pinang. And then I have one minute left. I will stop when the time comes. But anyway, to monitor the staff and academics, we have adopted what we call through WhatsApp, through apps, what we call staff attendance system, ataupun sistem kerja fleksibel. And then also we have a staff health monitoring system where we can track them when they are, in order to contain the USM perimeter from the pandemic. And then of course we have temperature monitoring screen at all the entrance. So these are the platform that we open up in order to respond to the need of the staff and as well of the student. Quickly, on the online platform, I want to share further later, we see a huge jump in terms of usage when we adopt work from home and online learning. We see a huge jump in terms of we use Webex as a platform in our university, a huge jump in terms of usage, which I'm going to share later. So I think I have to stop now and then use my second half to complete my presentation. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for the presentation, first part presentation. We're looking forward to the second part of the presentation to look at the policy implication. Shall we welcome our third speaker, Rosalini.
Prof. Mushidi, allow me to share screen.
Yes, Rosalini M. Fernandez Chung is an associate professor in the School of Education and the recent past director of Center for Academic Partnerships and Engagement at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Prior to joining UNM, she was the Vice President, Quality Assurance at Health University and the Director for Standard and Reference Malaysian Qualification Agency, MQA. She developed the Malaysian and Bangladesh quality assurance systems, which includes policies, regulations, standards, and strategies. She continues to contribute to policy and QA development nationally and internationally. Rose has led more than 150 international audits and consultancies in policy development, quality assurance, and transnational education. Rose will speak on leading international partnership, a case study. We are looking forward to best practices in leading international partnership from University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Over to you, Rose.
Thank you, Prof. Mushidi. Good morning, everyone. And thank you again for having me on this session. And I am actually very happy to be part of this discourse. And let me just take you very quickly through the session. I am in a very difficult position because the two speakers before this was perfectly on time. So I've got a big challenge in front of me. So as Prof. Mushidi said, my task is to actually share with you the experience that we had, how we led partnership during the pandemic. Well, the case study, or as I would like to call it a case study, it basically is 9 months in 9 minutes. That's what I'm trying to do. So please bear with me. I hope you can hear me well and you can see the slides, yeah? So the narrative, the story is basically about how we at the Center for Academic Partnerships and Engagement, or CAPE, managed or led the transnational partnerships during the pandemic. As you can rightly imagine, it was a difficult time, especially when travel was not possible and training became very difficult. So is my slide not moving? All right. So the journey, CAPE is relatively new. We are 2 years old, 3 years old as of December last year. So by the end of 2019, after the initial 2 years of setting up, we found that everything was in place and we were literally surging forward. You know, there was a renewed momentum among our colleagues. We had multiple national and international training programs taking place, memorandums of associations being signed, agreements being signed. Short and long-term CPD type training were also in place, and we were quite happy. And then we were hit by the first lockdown. And at the beginning, we felt that was the end, like everything has to come to a halt. But really it wasn't. And I'll take you through a very quick review on how we managed to do what we did in the last 9 months. Well, literally what we did was taking the bull by the horns. That's not me, by the way. I'm not that slim. So what we actually did was we looked at 3 things, and we thought this was really crucial to get our focus right. In early March, looking at what was happening globally with the pandemic, with the disease, we felt that we needed to have a strategic plan. What is our COVID-19 strategic plan? So CAPE developed its own COVID-19 strategic plan. We also looked at how, in that plan, we also looked at why is it important, and how do we lead staff during this time, and how do we continue to engage partners during this time, yeah? So the 3 things we did: strategy, staff, and synergy, the 3 S. let me just putting our best foot forward. That was our plan. When we talked about the strategic plan, we developed a strategic plan called MCO and beyond, because we didn't know how long the MCO would last. And of course, the initial response to the MCO was, this is just going to be a 2 weeks lockdown, you know. But so we called our strategic plan MCO and beyond. We had different, but it was basically a 15-month plan starting April 2020 to June 2021. We had some guiding principles when we actually started the strategic plan. We said we need to honor the commitment to our partners. We need to safeguard income generation for the university, keeping in mind that Nottingham is a private university, maintain goodwill with existing and potential partners, and finally, of course, adopt and accelerate seamless integration with existing platforms. And what we did was we looked at the action plans that we had. And some of these action plans were to review our teaching plans, materials and training activities, to ensure that minimum disruption during this pandemic. We continued the ongoing negotiations and the MOAs that we were supposed to have, and we kept partners engaged to ensure consistent delivery and timely intervention. So we literally kept our eye on the ball, if you'd like to know what we did, yeah? So, and we worked our fingers to the bones, literally we did. I don't think any one of us in the team had actually worked so hard in our lives as we did in the last 9 months. So what was our input? So in very brief form, our input when we talked about reworking the delivery and schedule, timeline and decks, we actually reviewed all our teaching decks to make it ready for online delivery. We provided voiceover for the delivery since students can no longer come to our shores or we cannot travel to where students are. Then all our decks had recordings and we put those on our Moodle. We engaged partners to negotiate on the online delivery because some of the delivery was arranged for face-to-face and we could no longer travel, participants could no longer travel. So we engaged our partners to actually negotiate online delivery. And some of these also included really hard discussions and negotiations on pricing, because somehow people felt that if it's online, it has to be cheaper, which is so not real. You know, we find that online means more work for all of us. So we actually negotiated, and I'm quite happy to report that all our planned delivery for 2020 was carried out in that 9 months, even though we were in lockdown. We provide standalone training programs to partners. This is our way to keep our partners engaged. And in total, we conducted 1,987, we trained 1,987 participants from 6 countries using our standalone online training. Many of these were on leadership and pedagogy. We continued existing programs. So in the span of the 9 months, we completed 3 MOAs. We had 728 master's level assignments graded. This is, if you want to know, it's about 6,000 words at each assignment. So we had it graded, remarked, and moderated. We also, in the midst of all these, we did not forget ourselves. And I think that's the underlying core of our success. No matter how hard we worked, we did not forget ourselves. We actually we had about 32 research continuously carried out at that time. There were total 11 publications, lower than what we had projected initially. There were about 73 CPD training, all of them were on webinars, and there were 3 CSR activities carried out during the 9 months. Now, you may be wondering how many people we had to do all this, yeah? There was myself as the director, there were 8 academics, and there were 4 academic support staff. So this is what we did in the last 9 months. How did we do it? The enablers for us, I come back to the same 3 S that we had: strategy, staff, and synergy. So let me just very quickly talk about staff. And I know Prof. Roslan mentioned about staff and how important is it to keep staff engaged and supported. So what we did was staff well-being was paramount in our activities. So what we did, we actually kept each other in the loop and we kept in touch with each other. So we had what we call online social sessions, we had storytelling. We even tried something, it failed after about 2 Saturdays or 3 Saturdays. We even had Saturday evening get together. We talked about our life stories, how we met our partners, and then somehow it did. After 3 weeks, we kind of no longer interested. We kind of, we had those kind of activities. We tried a lot of new things, but we certainly had this online social sessions. We had online teh tarik. We had showing each other our work desk, taking pictures of it and showing our mugs to people. Simple but effective ways to keep each other very highly entertained and connected. We also did not forget young families, because if we had colleagues among us with young children, we wanted to ensure that they are also equally engaged. So we had what we call junior crusaders, because we call ourselves caped crusaders. So we had junior crusaders session, whereby we had, I remember my first session, the first session we had was explaining to them how COVID works to the young ones, and I had to learn from my husband and then try to teach them and explain to them how COVID works. So it was really fun. And we had junior crusader sessions. We had, the other thing that I found very important was these morning messages. Every morning for the 9 months, with the exception of Saturday and Sundays, I actually sent good morning messages to my team every morning without fail. No matter how rotten I felt that morning, that good morning message went out. And eventually people used to send me a message. If I'm late by a few minutes, they send me, where's your good morning message today? So it was really good that I felt that the motivational messages would really be very helpful to keep the team together. Now, the other part, which, I don't want to leave here giving you the impression that we had no challenges. We had major challenges. But what we did, these were some of our challenges. There were conflicting priorities amongst ourselves and also with our partners, lack of understanding sometimes. Why are we doing this? Why can't we do it differently? There's difficulty in sustaining the momentum, especially we have colleagues who are all alone here without family support. They're international colleagues. So that's really difficult for some of them to maintain that momentum. Sometimes we need to redefine the concept of challenge and telling people that, look, no, don't look at it as a challenge. This is more of an opportunity. And of course, more importantly, we needed to continuously keep track and monitor all our activities. So in fact, I felt in the 9 months that we managed the partnership, we actually continue to rise to the occasion and to actually overcome the challenges that we felt. Yeah. So I will stop here at this point. And the next part would be, what lessons have we learned and what are the policy implications that we can gather from the 9 months of managing partnership during the pandemic? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prof. Mushidi.
Prof. Mushidi, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Our fourth presenter is Gurpradip Singh. Mr. Gurpradip Singh graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from University of Technology Malaysia in 1988 and a Master's of Science degree in Technology Management from Staffordshire University, UK. He has had more than 30 years of experience in both the ICT and higher education industries as a developer, project manager, technology manager, and educator. He started his career as an IT project manager with Malaysia's leading banking group. And then Gurpradip then moved into a management role within the higher education sector, leading program design, development, and delivery, as well as technology deployment and operation management at Asia Pacific Institute of Technology, or APIT. He was instrumental in the institution's growth and evolution into a university college and eventually to full university. He is now holding the position of Chief Operating Officer of APIT Education Group, and apart from his primary responsibility for development and operation of the business, he leads the development and execution of the digital transformation strategies in support of the institution within the group. So let us welcome Mr. Gurpradip Singh to speak on leading income maintenance and generation in the COVID area.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that introduction. And I think a very good morning to all the participants here. before I share my slide, I'll just want to echo how similar, I mean, when I've heard the earlier speakers speak, I think it mirrors or resonates quite well with our own experiences in the university. So I won't go too much into detail in those areas, because my focus here will be mainly on the business side of things. I mean, at the end of the day, while we ensure that the staff and the student side of things and the educational aspects are taken care of in the pandemic, we also have to make sure that the business of higher education continues. And I think that's the perspective that I will have, that I've been asked to talk about here. So let me just share my slide now. And I hope that you're able to see my screen.
Yes, can see.
All right, that's good. Well, okay. As I said, my perspective will be more on the focus. My focus will be more on sustainability of the institutions, and in particular, the financial sustainability of the institutions. And again, I will share my perspective as much as possible, both from an institutional perspective as well as from an industry perspective, because I think that's quite important going forward. Yeah. And I know I'm going to steal a bit of Rosa's idea earlier. She said 9 months in 9 minutes in 9 months, or 9 months in 9 minutes. I think since we are talking about 12 months, I'm going to take about 12 minutes. All right, which I hope I will be allowed to. Yeah. So I think if we are talking about sustainability, to try to understand, again, I'm going to speak purely from this perspective of the private higher education institutions, or the private higher education industry, which my institution belongs to. And I think before we even talk about the pandemic, it's important to provide a perspective of where this industry was just before the pandemic, to provide that level of understanding of where it was and how the pandemic affected the industry and institutions within the industry as a whole. And then probably in the second half, we'll talk about the way forward and how this needs to be, how issues related to sustainability of institutions within this industry needs to be addressed here. So I'll start off by talking about the industry itself. Yeah. And this is some information that I've collected from various sources, publications from MOHE and from Department of Statistics. And just to give you a perspective, this is, like I said, just before the pandemic. There are more than
Mr. Kupadip, can you click
see?
Next to your slide?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
we didn't see it at the
see.
moment.
Hasn't appeared yet, has it?
Yeah, not yet, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me just. Ken?
Yeah, sure.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Don't know what happened. Okay, so I think this is to give you a perspective of where the industry was just prior to the pandemic. I mean, this is an industry with more than 400 institutions, very highly self-sufficient institutions with a major role to reduce the government's burden in providing higher education to Malaysians. And you know, about 15.8 billion in total assets, annual expenditure 7.4 billion, hiring about 35,000, maybe close to 40,000 people, including 23,000 people in the academic area. And in terms of contribution to the total economy, and this is, like I said, just before the pandemic, it was estimated that this sector contributed something like 31.5 billion into the economy. And out of which 11.3 billion is just from the international students itself. Yeah, so this is all institutions, all encompassing, and this is where the industry was, like I said, just before the pandemic. And in terms of the roles that these institutions play, it's interesting, and this is a very maybe not a very well-known fact, but more than half of Malaysian students actually study in private institutions. So as of just before the pandemic, it was estimated that about 50.3% of students pursuing higher education were in the private institutions. And more importantly, 75% of international students in Malaysia were in the private sector as well. Yeah. And there were targets to achieve greater participation of higher education, and the private sector was seen to be a major catalyst in ensuring that growth. So this is where the industry was. But there were also significant concerns about sustainability, and this is, like I said, just before the pandemic came about. And there were various reports. I think we read these articles and publications that were made just prior to the pandemic, where there were some statements made. 49% of PHAIs have been operating at a loss since 2015. 61 PHAIs closed down between 2016 to 2019. 34 PHAIs in the process of being closed down in 2020. And then there was also this issue of reduced overall international student enrollment, although, like I said, international student numbers had been growing in the years preceding the pandemic, but towards 2018, 2019, there was already a drop being seen in overall enrollment of international students coming into Malaysia due to various reasons. And I think we can talk about various aspects such as perception of handlings of students, visa issues, regulatory agencies, so on and so forth. But I think there was already a concern, and this is a concern felt across industry even before the pandemic, that numbers were reducing. And I think the ministry itself, to their credit, were actually very, very keen to ensure that this was reversed. And in fact, there was one statement, I've taken this from a statement from the Asia Sentinel, a 5% drop in revenue would turn 70% of Malaysia's private higher education institutions to money-losing entities. So it was that critical. Yeah, I think the situation with private institutions was there were serious concerns about sustainability, and I think the ministry themselves stepped in and said that this is a very important industry to the Malaysian economy. I think in 2019, the Prime Minister, PM7 or 8, okay, I've lost count. The PM said that this is actually an industry, a very important industry within Malaysia, needs to be supported, needs to be nurtured. And I think the Ministry of Higher Education took the cue and actually spearheaded a lot of developments in this area. And the most important development was the publication of this document, which is the way forward document. Yeah, and this was developed in collaboration with industry, with the private sector as well, and was published literally in February 2020, just before the pandemic. And the focus was on the focus of this document. Can you see my slide? I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are 5 pillars defined within this document, and this document was developed together with the industry and the ministry and all stakeholders that were involved. And there were 5 areas that were identified, that were looked at as areas for reform: agile governance, transform delivery, and the third one is the most important one: institutional sustainability. So there were issues that we pointed out were central in ensuring that the institutions were able to be sustainable, and there are a lot of measures that were identified in there. So I think we were poised. In February 2020, this document was released. We were extremely excited, working with the ministry to try to launch a lot of initiatives under this document. And of course, as we all understand, the bombshell came just after that. This is the 16th of March, 2020. I mean, this of course, this was an announcement that that we were going to go into MCO on the 18th of March. So, but even then, on that day, we had, as an institution, just sharing our institution's experience, even before that announcement, we already had decided that students were not coming to campus anymore from the 16th of March. And we were going to commence online learning fully on the 23rd of March. In fact, 2 weeks before this announcement, we even had students already. At that time, the pandemic was confined to China, so we had students who had gone back to China and who couldn't come back. So we got our academic staff together and said, look, there are students who are stuck in their country. We need to ensure that we cater for them and ensure that they are addressed in our learning, in our classrooms. And so the concept of hybrid learning already started then. Because we had students who were already unable to come back from their countries at that time. But we also did say that it's more likely than not that all students would be not able to come in the next couple of weeks. So we got to be prepared for that. So I think the mindsets were already put in place. We put all staff together even before the MCO announcement was made. And this is again an example of how leadership response has to be put in place. So we had to very quickly pivot to that. So we also try to look for, sorry, I have to dismiss. I have a timer here telling me what time I'm supposed to stop. Okay, so very quickly, we also looked around for frameworks to help us, to guide us in response to the pandemic. One very useful one is one that was published by Deloitte, very elegant one. It talks about 3 stages: recovery, response first, recovery, and how the organization was going to thrive. This was dedicated, focused on the higher education sector. We did adopt and adapt quite a bit of this in our response to the pandemic. And so in terms of response, a lot of focus on education, in student recruitment, retention of students, and also in operations to ensure the sustainability of the business. And then we'll talk about recovery and thriving later. But overall, the impact on sustainability is very major. I think from a private institution's perspective, and this I think will be felt with all my colleagues in the sector, the biggest impact, of course, will be revenue. And obviously, private institutions are dependent almost entirely on student income, student fee income to support their operations here. So the major impact on revenue streams, in terms of new students, the pandemic actually immediately caused a dramatic drop in enrollment as far as local students are concerned. Now, you have to remember that for the private sector, the period between March and May is the most critical recruitment period, because we actually rely on students coming out from schools, from the STPM and SPM streams. And obviously this did not happen because we had to shut down during that time. Yeah? And like I said, that was the peak of the normal recruitment season. In terms of international students, obviously global lockdowns and students not being able to travel and other factors caused them to be able to not be able to come to Malaysia and therefore not enroll. Yeah. But it is important to note that if you lose that opportunity or window of recruitment within that year, the impact is not going to be felt just for that year, but over the next 3 or 4 years, because you've lost the student progression over the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah, you've lost that income over the next 3 or 4 years until the students complete. So unless you can recover that in the next year, this impact is going to be felt continuously, and that's a very important point to be aware of. Yeah. In terms of existing students, obviously there were concerns. We had to postpone our intakes, obviously. We also were concerned about students deferring their studies, concerned about the fact that we were going online, concerned about dropouts as well for various factors. We estimate that perhaps 8% of local students would drop out, and about 20% of international students, and for various reasons, like I said. And then at the same time, because of issues related to affordability, we also had the concerns about delayed fee payments, and we knew that students would not be able to keep up with their fee payments for obvious reasons, yeah, and especially those in the B40 and M40 groups. So this was the biggest concern. So there's a revenue shock here, while at the same time there is also loss of ancillary income. Universities do depend on income from accommodation and other ancillary parts of our businesses to support our operations. Yeah. On the other side, on expenses, the heavy investments to facilitate online learning, so tools and licenses for online learning, cloud services, where we moved everything to the cloud to ensure availability and reliability of access.
Mr. Gopadip.
Yeah, I know my time is running out. Just one more slide. Yeah, just and also the other areas, which I'm sure I think other colleagues in the industry and the other institutions would have also gone through, as well as the other expenses related to maintenance and staff costs and utilities. So you had a revenue drop, at the same time you had a cost increase, and that obviously raises major concerns about sustainability. Now, in terms of leadership response, and this is the last part before I stop, and then we move on to the second part later. So a key priority for leadership was to preserve existing revenue streams. So you have got revenue which is secured, the existing students, preserve it at all costs. And this is where we had to very smoothly pivot to high quality online learning, enhance virtual online support, help desk, so that students not able to come to campus, even staff are able to access support 24 hours a day from wherever they are. And overall provide overall confidence in the ability of the institution to provide online learning, as well as to keep students with us. So there are students we know, instead of causing them to drop out because they had family problems, loss of income, and so on and so forth. So we did set up a hardship fund, just like USM mentioned earlier. But in our case, we, the institution, in our example, we put in about 3 million ringgit aside and we actually disperse quite a bit of that to help students in need. Yeah. And then we also had to make sure that we could revive new revenue streams. That means recruitment of new students had to continue. So obviously we had to focus a lot on electronic promotional approaches, digital social media, web marketing, open days, and of course e-orientations to build that revenue stream again. Yeah. And finally to also manage costs. And this is where we were very keen to ensure that staff productivity was enhanced, and we sort of fast-tracked our digital transformation plans and deployed technology to ensure efficiency of funds. So this is how we try to mitigate the effects of the pandemic, and all this is part of the response. All right. Now, obviously, this has happened, and we are where we are now. And I think when we go into the second part later, we'll talk about the future. All right. What about recovery and the future of the sector and also the institution? So I'll stop here right now before I get another warning message. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gupadi, for that presentation. Very interesting presentation in the case of APU. Can you hear me? I'm okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I'm waiting for the set of questions from Doria. But in the meantime, can I pose one to the presenters who wants to come in? Within the institutions, probably Guy, you may have some sense of indication from the institution you have surveyed. Were there some indication of preparation for risk management, in the sense that the university authorities or leadership had been always on the lookout for any disruption as such? Are there any institutions that just fall into something that they are not aware of, or they are already in their plan, a risk management plan, taking account a pandemic such as this in their strategic plan or whatever?
Can I start with that, Morshidi? I think what we've noticed from the global data is that the institutions in Asia were actually much more prepared to respond to this kind of crisis. And I think that might just be anecdotally, and speaking to people, I think that might just be the fact that you've already gone through, institutes have gone through SARS. Sometimes you have to close down because of the smog and the bushfires, etc. So I think institutions have been prepared for that. And indeed, speaking to Prof. Kamala at DVC at who you'll all be familiar with, she was saying in an interview with me that was the case. I think that institutions were prepared for that sudden pivot. I don't think they're necessarily prepared for the pivot that is going to last longer, but they were certainly prepared for kind of the short-term crisis that COVID caused. And whereas in the UK, and particularly in the UK, they were woefully unprepared, and also they didn't have the consistency that Malaysia had, because I guess it's they're much more autonomous and they don't necessarily take government instructions. So that there are a variety of different responses. Some institutions closed, some opened, some reopened, then reclosed, etc. So there was a kind of backwards and forwards, certainly in the UK, so a lack of consistency. So I think Malaysia, in terms of the response, has done better, and indeed Asia as a whole has done better.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in from the institutional perspective? Were there any risk management or risk element in your plan that takes into account a pandemic as such?
Yeah, Prof. I think, again, because we are a private institution belonging to a private company with a board, and I think one of the key parts of governance of this institution, of private institutions, is having a risk management framework in place. And I think part of that was, in fact, just 6 months before that, we went through an exercise of developing a risk management framework. And this is what we call, within our framework, we call it a black swan event. Black swan event is when everything basically shuts down and you cannot continue operations. and it was good that we had that in place, because we were able to foresee or sort of develop scenarios in which that measures need to be taken to move very quickly and to be able to continue our operations. So yes, I think risk management really helped us very much in preparing for this. Yeah.
Okay, Doria, you have a set of questions?
Yep. But I think Dr. Rose, are you going to speak because you're opening up your?
It's okay. I can.
Okay.
I think Hardip actually mentioned exactly what I was about to say. We do have plans, but we were not ready for this extent of interruption. I think that's all.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so let me share the set of questions. You should be able to see a Word document. So there are 3 questions in total. Prof, can you see?
Yes, Prof. Roslan.
First question to Prof. Roslan. Prof. Roslan, not sure if Prof. Roslan can answer because this is directly to ministry.
Okay.
Is there any regulation on the management of funds?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So basically, we did refer to MOHI in terms of it's not a so-called force. It's a voluntary, what do you call, expression of sympathy for those affected. So we started with the top management first, and then we opened open the offer to the staff where they have to sign some kind of form to say that they did this on voluntary basis. So there's no issue with the MOHI regulation. So Alhamdulillah, and then this shows also the spirit of the top management that we reading, and we're planning actually to do for the second time, anticipating for the coming pandemic onslaught, so to speak.
Most important thing also, Prof. Roslan, is income tax relief. The contribution.
The contribution. I'm not sure about that.
There's
to check. Yes.
There's a letter from the bursar that says that the amount you contribute, you can declare it in your income tax return.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's a voluntary. You decide how much you want to contribute, and then you can declare it as an income tax when you return your income tax statement. I think the response was very good. Prof. Roslan, 1.5.
It's more important is to show the spirit of togetherness. We are together. So this is more important than money itself.
Okay. Question following from that, Prof. Roslan. Public universities are supposed to be autonomous. In the case of fund, in the case of disburse of fund, how is your relation with the ministry? You have to refer to them all the time, but the ministry has to refer to other ministries most of the time during COVID era. Do you think that is a time-consuming kind of process?
Okay, so basically we know that the government also being facing the challenge in terms of managing the entire population, and then sorry, being a public institution, we have to, we have so-called, we have to cope with that. And then one of the thing that we did, the raising the fund from our own pocket, and then so of course the government being very helpful in terms of giving out the orders and setting up the SOP, so on and so forth. We try to follow that, and then also in terms of regulation of international student coming by setting the NADMA, where the international student coming, they will stay for 2 weeks for the isolation before they being released to our university. So in terms of that, we are thankful to the government. But of course, in terms of money, we know the limitation by the government, and we try to work on our, I mean, our own in terms of the money. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Roslan, for that interesting response to the questions. And my follow-up question. To Guy, question to you, Guy.
Yeah.
Can you share your survey sampling procedures, such as public and private university respondent? That's how you undertake the study, the survey.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we work individually with institutions around the world. So the institutional survey, we change some of the items to reflect the actual nature of the institution in terms of faculties and the names of accommodation. But the survey is the same globally. The institution sent it out to all of their students. We hope to get response rates of around 30 to 40%. It's increasingly challenging to get students to fill out surveys, as you know, particularly during this period. We had our COVID response survey. So we try and get as high as response rate as possible, but it's sent to all students. In terms of the question, and I think Rosna asked whether the split between public and private, it's a pretty equal split, certainly in terms of numbers. Globally, we had around 35,000 respond to the COVID response survey. We have usually 300,000 respond to our standard barometer. So it's one of the largest surveys in the world. In Malaysia, we have clients like UTM, APU have run our survey, Sunway, etc. So it's a pretty equal balance in terms of student numbers between the public and private. And obviously we can split the data to compare the data between the public and the private, and if the student responses are different. Sorry, that was quite a long answer to a relatively short question. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Guy, for that survey procedure. From Rose, to all, probably let me read. How did national policy support institutions to ensure financial sustainability during COVID era? Right, Rose?
Yes, sir. That's a question.
Not before that, yeah. During the COVID era.
Yeah, particularly.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody? Pardeep?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question, Ross. I think the national policies or national response from the regulators, first of all, I've got to say that the response and the efforts put in by the Ministry of Higher Education, especially under JPT, was fantastic. The hard work, I've never seen a ministry work as hard as JPT. From morning till almost midnight, and sometimes running into 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, we were engaged with them in trying to ensure that we could put forward the issues from the private sector institutions, and also support them in coming up with recommendations to MKN for opening up of the sector and so on, and coming up with SOPs. So every SOP was also bounced off with us. So there was a lot of care taken by the regulatory agencies to ensure that we were able to sort of sustain ourselves. So so I think from a national policy angle, I would say that was the main response that we got. Also, agencies like MQA, for example, very quickly issued approvals for everybody to be able to deliver fully online, and also to allow us to use alternative assessments, and that contributed to our ability to continue operations. So I think the support at national level was mainly in terms of regulation, the regulations, and also the SOPs that allowed the institutions to continue operating. Not really direct financial support, but actually providing the ability to continue to operate, which was critical, really critical. And even now, allowing students to come back, there have been on and off policies, obviously, over the year, last year, but I think since January, everybody's got their act together, and international students are now able to come in. They're, of course, trickling in slowly, but the system is in place to ensure students are able to come back and be safe and things like that. So, like I said, the support is mainly in terms of regulatory responses rather than really financial or fiscal responses. Yeah.
Okay. While the national policy support institution, it is the internal policies of the institution to balance revenue, costs, and expenditures, and so on and so forth. Okay. Thank you. From Samsul UMS, talking about best practices, are we in position now to be able to identify best practices since we are just been exposed to this pandemic, we are going through trial and error. Are we in position to say a few words on best practices to date in terms of risk management, communication?
I think if I may start off, Prof, and probably other colleagues can follow through. The most important priority now is to build confidence among staff and students. Building confidence is extremely important, that the campus is a safe place to be. So I think in terms of best practice, it's got to be visible. It's got to be very, very, put out there, in terms of even showing people carrying around sanitization equipment and showing the thermal scanners that we've put in place. And so I think as we move into a recovery phase, we've got to make sure that confidence is built among the students and staff. Because I would like to say a bit, although now we are allowed to bring a certain category of students back to campus, by right, we should be having at least about 30 to 40 students, percent of our students back to campus, but the take up is probably maybe 10 to 15%. So there's still a lot of concern, still a lot of fear. And I think that to me is if you want to ask for what the best practice is to continuously communicate the ability to stay safe, but also ensuring that the responsibility is also on every individual for themselves to comply with the necessary SOPs and to keep everybody safe. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in on this?
Prof, can I very quickly comment on something that Pardeep said, as well as commenting on best practices?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So just to comment on what Pardeep said about the university's work, the ministry working really quick and fast. And I think I can completely agree with that, because the regulations and the guidelines from ministry came out very quickly and we were able to use them. In fact, I think there were too many as well, sometimes one after another, that it was even difficult to keep up with the ministry. But one area that I'm looking at it from the partnership perspective, of course, that ministry somehow forgot was partnerships, how to advise universities. The partnerships, or international partnerships especially, they are very important for branding Malaysia as an international hub of higher education. So if you look through all our guidelines that came through, there was nothing really much on partnerships and managing them. So it would be something that maybe moving forward, if you ever come up with another problem like this, the ministry may want to actually have a little bit of focus on branding Malaysia and on partnerships. But coming back to best practices, I definitely think we have learned a lot in the last year or so. And these practices, forums like this could be a really good place where we can pick up some of these best practices and share. I'm sure things like USM creating staff fund, for staff and by staff would really be a good exercise that many universities may go up today and try and emulate or follow. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rose, for that. Doria, are we set for 15-minute break?
Can we afford 15-minute break? I think it's 10:34. I think we can go.
10 minutes.
Okay, sure. So ladies and gentlemen, that was round one for our forum today. Discourse today, sorry. We'll go for 10-minute break. It's 10:34. Let's start with round two at 10:45, probably 11 minutes of break. Prof, is that okay with you?
Okay.
Okay,
Fine.
so go for a break, get your coffee, and we'll come back at 10:45. See you later.
Thank you.
All right, we have 1 more minute left. Let's wait for a while before we continue with round 2. All right, for those who are watching on Facebook, your Facebook does not have a problem. It's just going on a break for a brief moment. Welcome back. I hope you have enjoyed round 1 of your session just now. So a few keywords that we managed to take note of. Number 1, business continuity. That's most important for higher education. Number 2, staff well-being. Prof. Rosalini mentioned just now. Guy highlighted this, student well-being. And finally, Mr. Gopardip, sorry if I get your name wrong, Mr. Gopardip highlighted 2 forms of sustainability actually, financial sustainability and institutional sustainability. Now, Prof. Moshidi, over to you to start off round 2.
Okay, thank you, Doria, for that brief introduction to the session. Obviously, from the first phase, the first part of the presentation, we have listened to some of the key elements. In the case of Guy's presentation, obviously they have, in the case of Malaysia, the high proportion of those responding good and satisfied is very high, right, Guy? In the case of Malaysia, it's a reflection of the leadership of the institution concerned in terms of handling student affairs in the time in this difficult time. And then in the case of Prof. Roslan, obviously in this difficult time, the leadership need to work together with the staff. Obviously, the staff has responded well to the leadership initiative in the sense that they are willing to contribute to the kitty, the COVID kitty, in order to sustain whatever activities they have within the campus. So a wholehearted participation of the staff reflect a good reflection on the university leadership in trying to get such positive response from the staff. Okay, from the leadership perspective, obviously in the case of Nottingham, the international partnership cannot be neglected. Even though in the COVID area, we still need to maintain those partnerships in order to get things going, especially partnership with external external partners. Yeah, and in the case of Gupardip, yes, private institution, they have to take care of the stakeholders. They have to take into account their parent holding companies and so on. Obviously, it's very interesting to see Gupardip at the end of the day, when you report your financial sustainability to the Ministry of Higher Education, how would they consider this difficult era? When you reflect on your balance sheet or whatever in this difficult era, are they going to be sympathetic? Are they going to be business as usual, or they will come hard on you because you are not? So there's a very interesting thing. So these are the issues that we want to look at in the second part. What are the implications of all those experience and lesson learned from what you have presented? Let me begin with you guys, Guy Perring, from the student perspective. Yeah, guys.
Thanks.
What are the implications for leadership policy, university leadership, and the ministry leadership? What do you think, Guy?
Thanks, Morshid. I've got a few more slides to show a little bit more data, but as you said, my main focus will be on the leadership responses. So let me share the slides again. Can I just check that somebody can see, can somebody indicate that we can see those slides?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on from the end of part one, I've got a few more slides to share. Moving on now.
Yeah, okay.
Students, we asked the students overall, do you prefer studying online or face-to-face? And you can see that vast majority, 77%, face-to-face. They want to get back to the campuses. As Pardy indicated earlier, they do want to come back, but they want to come back and when they're ensured that it's safe. And obviously the measures that institutions have to communicate that to the students. So the headline changes from 2019 to 2020. And you can see that many things, of course, have gone down. It's not surprising. To be honest, it's surprising that they haven't gone down more. So overall satisfaction is down 6%. Value for money, 7%. Obviously, students were still paying fees, but they weren't having the access to some of the wonderful campuses you have here. And, you know, it's noticeable, of course, that happiness as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And you can see what's increased is concern about completing their studies and also overall stress. And that's true of staff as much as it is students. So social activities have declined, social orientation, the ease of setting up a bank account, all the things to do with arrival have declined quite substantially. We can see here that surprisingly physical library has gone up a little, class size inevitably has increased. Program organization, access to the online library, virtual learning has declined slightly since 2019. Clearly, what students are missing are social activities, social facilities, opportunities for international students, the opportunities to experience the host culture, opportunities to make good contacts for the future. And we know from our data that that opportunity to make good contacts for the future has a very strong correlation with overall satisfaction and overall recommendation. So the fact that that's dropping is worrying, because students will only go to an institution if they feel that they can build good contacts for the future. They're not just going there to experience the learning or experience the curriculum. They're there for the whole experience of making good contacts for the future, making friends, etc. The other areas, living cost, obviously increased, safety. Surprisingly, I guess they were at home. So things like support, and this is again a key thing. Support for the clubs, they couldn't access the usual clubs and societies. One of the interesting things that did increase, however, was the health centre. And I think that the health centre was actually doing a very good job of providing the counselling online. And hopefully we can talk about this later. But I think one of the things that happened during the pandemic is that students who were experiencing stress, who might have been reluctant to go to the health centre, you know, to sit in a waiting room, to then talk about their own stress, were actually more comfortable accessing the services online. So I think that's one of the benefits, I think, of the, if we can call it a benefit, is that students feel that they can now reach out online for help and support for some areas of stress that they might be feeling. As Prof. Morshidi mentioned, you can see here very clearly that Malaysia does particularly well. It's not quite as good as Singapore or Germany or Thailand, but compared to the global, 68% of students were either satisfied or very satisfied. In Malaysia, it was 75%. You can see that's considerably better than New Zealand, Australia, and as you can see, the UK, a relatively small percentage of satisfaction, only 56%. And as we talked earlier, that was about communication. And I think the point that Pardeep made about communication to both the students and to the parents, and you know, the extra point I want to make is that you need to make sure you're communicating on lots of different levels. It's no good communicating to students through Facebook. That might be okay for the parents of students, but we need to make sure we're using all the different avenues and vehicles of communication that this generation use. So just to finish, and in terms of the lessons I think there are for leaders, I think that students over the last few months have been very understanding and perhaps forgiving of the need for online provision, particularly at the heart of the pandemic. But overall, and that, you know, I think some of the quality has been poor. Today, we're listening from very high, you know, well-resourced, experienced institutions like APU, USM, and Nottingham. But if we go to smaller colleges with perhaps without the resources, then they would really struggle. And there is a need for investment in the infrastructure, online pedagogy in terms of training, and also the overall quality of the online delivery. And I think that's absolutely key. And that needs investment. It needs central investment from government for institutions who cannot afford to do that. You can't just simply stick a camera in front of a lecture or rely on a series of videos to click through. You can't just replace the campus experience with a MOOC experience. It really needs to be thought about deeply, and it's not cheap. Online is not a cheaper option. Again, Pardeep has already mentioned the investment that was needed. So I think the leaders do need to look across the market for quality online provision and also provide training programs for all staff, both academic and support staff. And obviously the leaders themselves need to be aware of the training that is out there and also the range of quality online provision. And again, that's something perhaps that ACAP could look at. I think finally, and I've said this already, the value to students is not just the curricular or the learning. International students are not going to come to APU just to get the curriculum. You know, increasingly they can get that online. They're coming there for the whole experience. They attend universities to create networks for the future, make friends, and join social activities. And so post-pandemic leaders need to ensure that they can create those systems to allow this to happen both face-to-face and also within online communities. And that is the challenge. And for international students, that's even more commute. They do need access to the social aspects of the university. They won't come to Malaysia if they just sit in their room and have to go online. There's no point. So I think that's also a challenge, is making sure that they're getting access to all the wider range of experiences that is part of university. And finally, we've mentioned this already, and great initiative she herself is doing with her staff. I think mental health and wellness, students have been less, they are more concerned about their future. Even before the pandemic, I think mental health and wellness was beginning to be talked about more in Malaysia and in Asia as a whole. And some students may have flourished online, but many have found that lack of human contact an area of great concern. So I think leaders got to be frank about this issue. They've got to open up about the problem and create the systems both online and face-to-face that removes that stigma of mental health and mental issues and allows students to comfortably reach out for help. And I think I'm just about over my time. So we covered hopefully a broad area, data, looking at study decisions, and also, as I've said, some conclusions for leaders, health, wellness, online provision. Thank you very much. I know the questions and answers are going to come after the other presentation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're missing you towards the end there, Guy. I think
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Guy, for that. Very interesting. Over to Prof. Roslan. It's Prof. Roslan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'll try to finish up my slides. Can anyone see it?
Yes. Okay, good.
So this in response to the pandemic, we adopt a blended learning where students only allowed to come into the campus when their necessity to do so, especially to conduct a lab session and experiment. But those who just rely on the lecture, they will be putting online. So there are various platforms that we provide to the student, but the prime one is on a WebEx session. But back to the management of the staff, we adopt what called SKKF, system kerja flexible, what we call it, where this 70% of staff don't have to come to the USM, but they will log on the mobile system or internet to register their working time and working hour. Right. Okay, I will elaborate more on that, but I would like to highlight the something very interesting. So in response to that, you see on our WebEx platform, there's a drastic change or huge usage from prior to pandemic. 2019 is about 6,000 WebEx session required, but from last time alone, we experiencing a huge surge of usage on the platform, which is 97,000 WebEx session has been happening for the last year alone. This comprises of meetings and lecture and training and so on and so forth. So in terms of sustainability, for example, we will take very moderate cost to save. I mean, it can save as expensive as one's flight and travel and accommodation, hotel and whatnot, and can be as cheap as meeting from colleagues. But we take average like 300 ringgit for a session to be safe. You multiply by 97,000 sessions, that's close to 30 million ringgit in terms of transaction and money, travel, accommodation will be safe. So this we can see that in response to that, we were providing a huge license on the WebEx, which is 26,000 license at one time, which cost us about 300,000. But you see the advantage of having online. Of course, there's some drawback, but due to the pandemic, there's no other way, but we have to resort to the online. So this is a huge saving in terms of money to university. And this is what I meant by SKKF module that we implemented, where the staff will clock their system at their home, and they will define what is their job of the day, and then their attendance will be recorded by university. And also a student and the staff, hostel staff, they don't need to go to the normal counter, but rather they will check on their handphone for their time of working. So in response to that, we have been going on into the new normal. There are a few initiatives which I would like to highlight to the participant today from USM point of view. In response to that, of course, this is a typical procedure for the staff and the academics movement. This is the typical SOP that we put across the campus and the responsibility into that. But talking about the money, this is a good initiative that we just completed what we call RFP, Request for Proposal. In response to the financial problem, we adopt what we call a request for proposal for the company to come in to monetize our asset. So there's a zero financial outlay from USM. So a company came in, invested about 4 million in building a synthetic football pitch, where it is free for USM and student staff from the morning until 7 o'clock. But from 7 o'clock, they will open for public, and they will charge the public for the usage of the football pitch. So on top of that, we also getting about 200,000 a year for these two football pitch, where there's a zero financial outlay from USM. So this is one initiative that we took, but of course there are many more others to come. On top of that, also there's also RFP, request for proposal, for installing PV or solar cell on the rooftop of USM is going to be launched very soon in June. And going to start installing. This also will reduce 20% of USM electric bill across 3 campuses. For your information, electricity bill for USM for 3 campuses amounting to 30 million. So if we install, going to install in the main campus first, 20% for 3 campuses is going to be amounting to 6 million a year across 3 campuses. So this is an initiative that we put forward, which has a zero financial burden on USM, but rather on monetizing of our asset. And then, of course, we look at student as also supporting our financial aspect. We keep deploying our staff in terms of recruiting the international student. We can see there's an increase of the enrollment. Of course, the intake. The important point is intake. Of course, a huge number of enrollment, but you can see there's an increase despite the pandemic. So this somehow telling the world that we really have no problem in terms of international student enrollment and intake. In response to the pandemic, also we have what we call CDAs, the Center of Development of Academic Excellence, which has been existent for many years before. But of course, due to the pandemic, we adopt MOC, Massive Open Online course or center. So we see some drastic change in terms of the production of micro credential and then the involvement of student and the staff in providing the course, the package, the curriculum online. And then finally, I would like to share also the psychological point of view, and we have deployed 27 personnel to do counseling intervention to the student and as well as the staff, where we set the hotline, and then they can contact us online. What we mentioned by my fellow colleague, the consultation all done through online, and of course we have to build the spirit high among the student in the campus as well. We thank our heroes, our frontliners, to keep the spirit high for togetherness to face this pandemic. And then we also initiate some message from our students to their parents back home, telling them they are okay, they enjoy the environment provided by the management of the university. They look forward to their learning online, so on and so forth. And then these are some statistics about our consultation among the staff and the student, okay, and also the public, okay. And this include emotion and mental and monetary and sickness, so on and so forth. So I think my time is up. I thank all of you for listening to my sharing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Roslan. We have a Q&A session later. Probably from the slide that you presented, for the counseling part, the number seems so small. The respondent, probably you can check on that if you have other information on support for staff in terms of counseling. We may discuss that later in terms of institutional policy in a pandemic situation, and what kind of counseling support system they need to be in place, how extensive and intensive this need to be. Okay, next to you, Rosalini. on what are the policy implications of international partnership in the COVID era?
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear the sharing by Guy and Prof. Ruslan. I'm also looking forward to what Pradeep has to say on this. So I have just 2 slides. I'll take you through very quickly on this, and I hope you can see these slides. Is that clear?
Yep.
Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So so coming to the first one, which is lessons learned. It's like, you know, when you use a hammer, I couldn't find a picture of a hammer hitting a thumb, you know, because I wanted to show that that's how it was in the 9 months that we had to manage the leadership last year. There was very quick ways in which we had to learn things. We didn't have much time to actually even you know, like take a sip of water in a way while the problems were hitting us. So these are some of the 5 main lessons that I think we have learned in managing partnership during this pandemic. So the first one, I think, is there must be a good support system to overcome challenges internally. Support system for the leaders themselves and support system for the staff or the team that is being led. So this is really crucial. So it is just not staff welfare, it's beyond staff welfare. It's about, there must be somebody that the leader can actually bounce ideas off, the colleagues can actually refer to if there are any challenges that comes out from dealing with this current problems. Yeah, communication must be very frequent, and it must be done with great care. We must be careful on how we are communicating, especially under the new norm. Communication was always online, and we did not have a policy that you had to turn on your cameras when we are having meetings. Therefore, sometimes we don't know the informal communication that can take place, you know, like when you're having face-to-face discussions with team, when you're proposing an idea, looking around, you know whether they are happy with the idea or not. But when you're doing it online, it's very difficult to understand what's going on. The nuances are not there anymore. More so when you're dealing with international partners, sometimes you hear something else, but their body language will tell you something else. So you don't get that wisdom. That part of that communication is no longer there. So hence, as a leader leading partnerships during this time, it is really important that you take greater care in how the messaging is put forward to people. The third one is to allow stakeholders, especially partners, to become co-constructors of solution. You know, it's very common in the pre-pandemic era. Most of the solutions are done. We normally make a decision and then we go ahead and do it. We convince the other party. But in the pandemic era, one of the lessons that we have learned, and sometimes in really, really hard ways, is that we cannot assume that the pandemic is viewed by our partner from the same perspective. Perhaps we took the approach in many things that, okay, it's a problem, but we can overcome it. Our ministry was very supportive. We had a lot of policy support from the ministry, especially when it came to online delivery. We had a partner country that the ministry clearly gave them, in the first 6 months, clearly gave them strict instructions, no online delivery. And here we were trying to push for online delivery, but they said, no, ministry said cannot do online delivery. So it was very difficult to actually come to a conclusion. And sometimes you feel that 6 months is such a waste. But nonetheless, here is a challenge. So whenever we are coming to a solution, especially in situations which are very fluid in the early stages of the pandemic, it's really important for stakeholders and partners and colleagues to become what we call co-constructors of that solution. Fourthly, we need to learn how to disseminate information directly to the end user. Again, it is something to do with the lack of face-to-face interaction. There is no, we are human, we are social creatures. As human beings, you're very comfortable sharing thoughts directly, and we have done that for centuries, I guess. And from the time we are young, we learned how to communicate using our hands, like what I'm doing now, using our hands, our eyes and our facial expressions. But with the online technologies that is coming in for meetings and seminars and everything else, that kind of removes us and gives us a bit of a distance, some sort of a digital distance is seen. Yeah. So it is important for us to then make sure that if we are communicating something, that information goes directly to the end users rather than passing it on to person A and then person A passes it on to the end user. So just to make sure that there is no miscommunication. And finally, I mean, this is not the end, it is just very selected lesson learned. Finally, to evaluate the impact of our actions and efforts. We got to do it early and we got to do it often. It's like almost every day we are looking at what is the impact of our actions, and we need to take remedial actions, and this remedial action must be appropriate in time and to context. Sometimes you don't have to take a solution immediately. We can wait before we come in with a solution. So these are 5 main lessons that we have learned as leaders, or I have learned as leader during the pandemic. I would take you then to the next slide, which talks about policy implications. Okay, so the policy implications, again, I've given you 5 important ones that I think I've learned in the 9 months. Number 1, student success and experience should always be an integral part of national and institutional policy. I think at the end of the day, as higher education providers and people within the sector, that is our core value that we cannot miss out, that student experience is important. Number 2, Hadik may find that statement quite difficult, but maybe not, I think funding, while helpful, it's certainly not the key to success. I think money is important, yeah. But in the 9 months, I have actually learned that sometimes when we talk to policymakers, we tend to also always focus on finance, but it is just not the finance, it is everything else that comes together. So one of the lessons I've learned from the 9 months is, yes, money is important, but I can do a lot of things that does not require funding to ensure that whatever activity that we take place, whatever activity that put in place will allow us to be successful, and I think that's key lessons that I've learned and key policy implications. Third one, staff welfare, Prof. Ruslan would certainly agree with this, is the cornerstone for institutional success, especially during the lockdowns, when people are unable to meet other people. There are people who are more social creatures than we are. I think I personally I'm very happy to be locked in my room and do my work. But I know colleagues who just cannot do that. They need to meet people every day. And lockdown was very difficult for some of our colleagues. So that welfare is really key to our success as well. Fourthly, I repeat this, I've said it earlier, ministry should have some scope for partnership policies, especially in this kind of environment, because it involves national branding. Maybe there should have been a call from the ministry saying, how do we ensure that all our partnerships, especially international partnerships, are well managed during the pandemic situation, or even a best practice approach? And maybe we can have a best practice to partnership management kind of thing, where you can learn from each other. So that really is crucial. And finally, moving forward, and I think this is probably more to the ministry than any one of us, I think policy should be written with an understanding of the context within which they are to be implemented. And these policies must allow for flexibility and innovation. Policies cannot be rigid. And we do have a lot of national policies which tend to be a bit rigid in its application and its approach. And this pandemic is a true lesson provider for us. It really tells us how the ministry had to come in really fast, maybe fast and furious, if I could say, with policies to help us overcome the implications of the pandemic. It would have been, maybe moving forward, it would be really good to allow that flexibility, to put in the flexibility even before such a pandemic hits us or before such a situation comes. So there could be in law, we call it a caveat or an exception to that rule. You can have a policy which is rigid, but say this policy will not apply in situations like forever, whatever. So that element of flexibility and innovation must be embedded in all the policies that ministry develops moving forward. Or perhaps policies that are already in place, ministry could actually add on that element of flexibility and innovation so that institutions, whether be it private or public, will be able to actually manage the situation given their own environment, their own circumstances, and do it well for the benefit of staff and students. So Prof, I would take leave after this. I think that would be the end of my slide. I think the most important thing of all, as I said again, would be the element of student experience and staff welfare, even in managing partnership. Thank you very much. Thanks, Surya.
Thank you, Rose. Very interesting from the policy perspective. We'll take that up later in the discussion. Gopardeep, over to you.
Okay, are you able to see my slide?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm just showing the slide again to just to bring everybody's attention back to what I had presented in the first session. And the point is, I think what we've had is, I mean, I agree with everything that the previous speakers have said. It's fascinating to see the students' responses, as Guy had indicated, and the importance of the social aspects and counseling and things like that. And of course, Ross, your focus on policies, how they need to change, it resonates well with what we've been doing. But I think the main point that I'm trying to say is that this is the scenario I painted earlier before our during the first session. And what is important to remember is that hasn't changed. The situation still exists. And in fact, I think if you were to think about it, it's probably worse than it was before the pandemic. If I want to share, very quickly share the state of the industry as we saw it towards the end of 2020, I think at the, as the dust settled, as it were, and at the end of the year, we actually did an analysis. This is based on data from various sources, official sources from the ministry and other places. This is where the industry was at the end of the year 2020. Basically, in terms of international students, we saw a 57% drop in new enrollments. That's, like I said, this is private sector, yeah. 25% drop in current enrollments, and this is mainly due to dropouts and other factors, and that resulted in a total revenue loss to the industry of 7.6 billion. Sorry, 3 something billion, from 11 to 7.6. In terms of Malaysian students, there was a 37% drop reported overall, yeah, down to about new enrollments from 143K to 86K. Again, various factors as we've gone through before, and a total 5% drop in total enrollment, with the resultant, again, loss about 3+ billion just in 2020. So in 2020 alone, the industry itself as a whole lost about 6.6 billion in terms of income to the country. That's the situation as it was at the end of 2020. And I mentioned, and I spoke about recovery earlier. The recovery pattern for this industry is not like other industries. Yeah, it's not like banks or airlines, and like I said, this is the slope downwards that you will go through, but recovery will be this way. So it's not as if it's going to be a V-shaped recovery where you get a very sharp reduction and then a very sharp increase. Other industries will see that, and you'll see that in once borders open up, you will see that in a lot of the airlines and the F&B areas and hospitality, but for education, the recovery will take maybe 4 or 5 years. As I said earlier, you've got to recover what you lost last year, and that what you lost last year is going to impact you on the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. So the situation that I presented earlier, the sustainability issues or the concerns that existed before the pandemic are now basically going to be worse going forward during the recovery stage. Yeah, and we've got to therefore think about what needs to be done to address this. Yeah, of course, I've also touched on certain frameworks that have been put together by Deloitte, and I think very useful if you're able to get our hands on this, have a look at this, because it does give you a very nice headline items to look at in terms of going beyond the pandemic, recovery and thriving. But if I were to just look at factors influencing recovery for the sector, essentially, to us, recovery requires that students eventually come back to campus. That is the big question now. All right. In order to recover, we need to build confidence, and we need to be able to bring people back to campuses. The question is, will they? Even if we allow students to come back to campuses, will they come back? Local students, like I said, there's still fear. And also, we are dealing with a generation that was able to adapt very quickly to online learning, and who have now found that, hey, look, I have a taste of online learning. Maybe I want to pick and choose when I come to campus. Maybe I want to come 3 days in a week, and the other 2 days I'd rather sit at home, because this university is able to provide hybrid learning. Now, talking about hybrid learning, this we believe will have to continue even going out right up to the end of this year and beyond, because there will still be students who will not be able to come back to the country, international students in particular. And so we've got to make sure that we are able to address both groups. International students, obviously, there are still concerns about, visa issues, flights, quarantine concerns, SOPs, on and off regulatory decisions. So the question is, will we be able to gain, or Malaysia itself as a country will be able to gain its position as a leading destination? We were probably during the mid 2020 to 2015, 2010 to 2015 period. But again, as I mentioned earlier, that was generally going on a downtrend just prior to the pandemic. So what would it take to revive that, to invigorate Malaysia's situation as a destination? Global competition, of course, you think about it, most of the top universities in the world, because of the pandemic, have also now are also offering a lot of online programs. So they are now saying, okay, you see a lot of ads now, for example, from UCL in UK, and they say, come and enroll for an online MBA with us. Now, if an international student was to sit in their home, why would they come to and register for a Malaysian university when they could enroll for mid to top ranked Australian, UK, US university online? So are we going to lose our competitive edge? The biggest edge that we had was Malaysia as the country, a safe country to be in, cost of living much lower and things like that. How do we bring back those advantages and make sure that we get students back into the country? And of course, I think funding, yes, Ross, you're right, funding is not the most important thing, but I think when you talk about the institutions who are already tottering on the brink, any funding aspects would really help. In the absence of funding, then I think one of the biggest imperatives that we had in the way forward document that I shared earlier was that there was going to be a lot of focus on regulatory reform, in giving institutions a lot more autonomy than they've had in the past, through regulations and through program standards and things like that. So the question is, will private institutions then be unshackled from restrictive regulations to enable them to innovate and to provide a greater range of offerings and a more diversity in what they're offering to people, to students, in order to be able to recover from this pandemic? That's a very important factor. So beyond the pandemic, I think one of the key things that we are sitting down and we have been reflecting on this. Well, we know that the pandemic is not a once in a lifetime event. Yeah. It's not as if that there's been a sudden magical snap and the virus completely disappears from the face of the earth. It's not going to happen. There will be pandemics again in the future in different shapes and forms. So it is likely that we'll never go back to the pre-pandemic days. What we talk about, the new normal or the new abnormal, is basically the normal that is going to go on and on. Hybrid learning is likely to continue beyond the pandemic. Again, like I said, because students themselves have said that, okay, we'd prefer to be able to have the choice of deciding when we want to come to campus. So issues like physical attendance and things like that are becoming less and less important to students. So there's no mad rush for students to come back to campus, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah. So it's no longer business as usual. In fact, we believe that this is the true disruption that this industry, higher education, has been waiting for or dreading for so long. Yeah. This is one industry which is considered to be the last bastion for disruption. Yeah, other industries have gone through major disruptions in terms of the way they run their businesses, but I think this industry has been fairly resistant, and it's only through the pandemic that we have now suddenly been disrupted, and it's not going to go back to what it was before. So as such, when we talk about recovery, and recovery basically is short term, short to medium term, we should basically, in trying to map out recovery strategies, there should be a lot of reflection and also a lot of thought about long-term reform. And this is on the part of the institutions, on the part of the regulators, policymakers, and also on the part of the governments as well. Yeah. So the core sustainability issues still exist. In fact, like I said, they are more serious than ever before for private institutions. The key question is, will institutions remain relevant in their current shape and form? How are our campuses? Will our campuses still, be an attraction? All right. Will we have campuses which are half empty? Will we continuously be forced to reduce capacity in classes because of social distancing? Will we have to restructure our buildings to make sure that we cater for the possibility of a pandemic reoccurring and things like that? So these are key issues because those have got major implications on the sustainability of institutions where heavy investments have been made in campuses. All right. how would the role of regulators evolve? Now, this is an interesting question, and it may be slightly controversial. Now, if you think about it, for the last 1 year, institutions, private institutions, have generally been given a lot of autonomy to run, to offer programs and to continue the teaching and learning to the best of what they feel students need, and to address students' need, and to continue to make sure that students achieve the learning outcomes that they're supposed to achieve and come out as employable graduates as required. So, and we've done it all without really going through the very, very rigid and close scrutiny that we have been used to in the past by regulatory agencies. Yeah, in fact, even MQA in their accreditation processes, they also went into virtual accreditation visits. So we didn't have the real very, very hard approaches that were taken in the past. And it was much lighter touch that we've had over the last 1 year. And surprise, surprise, the system hasn't collapsed. So I think we've got the regulators or policymakers maybe need to reflect. And again, echoing what Ross said earlier, this industry is able to ensure that it's able to meet their objectives, and also be able to maintain quality, and also able to maintain student outcomes despite being given a lot of autonomy. So I guess in the minds of most regulators, they might be thinking that, hey, we might be, after this pandemic, let's get back to our very, very stringent regulations and monitoring that we've had in the past. And I hope that that's not the thinking. And we want to make sure that that doesn't become the thinking among the policymakers. Yeah. So this autonomy has enabled us to prove ourselves. Institutions, both public and private, have been able to prove ourselves. And maybe it's time to unshackle us and to think about how we need to be looked at with a lighter touch. All right. And this actually is one of the hopes of the industry. Right. The final one relates to employability. Obviously, I think one of the benefits, or one of the key factors in ensuring employability of graduates is the interaction that they have with other students on campus. So I think that sort of a teamwork opportunities and exposure to multiple cultures and interaction and collaboration that happens on campus that didn't happen over the last 1 year. All right. So how is that going to affect graduate employability going forward? Employers look for such strengths. So that's also a question, right? Or are we going to look at the new type of employees that employers will be looking for? How do we and our discussion with employers now has centered around that as well, and how they are looking at a new breed of graduates coming out who have been through a system where they've not been able to physically operate. So these are questions, and like I said, I don't think anybody has all the answers at this point, but these are just questions that we need to put forward in terms of being able to try to map out how this industry is going to recover and also go forward and in fact thrive in the future. So that's basically what I wanted to share at the end, this part of this session. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share our insights from the private sector's perspective. And thank you to Pendapat and ACAP for organizing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gurpadip. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So the policy implication. Let me start with asking one question. Doria, you're back, yeah? Okay. Let me start with one question to anyone who is in position to respond. Having listened to all the presentation, if we are to develop a curriculum, a leadership training package or curriculum for ACAP, based on the pandemic experience for leaders of the university, obviously there are some common elements for both private and public institutions, but there are elements that are peculiar to the private. There are elements peculiar to the public. What is the common element for both?
I think if I may just start off that discussion, Prof. I think any leadership package to be put forward to leaders of both sectors, I think what's really important for leaders to have are the three things. First is agility. All right. So how to develop agility and how to drive agility across the organization. This has been plainly a major need over the last 1 year. And I think leaders who are able to basically not only themselves being agile, but also being able to drive agility across the organization, that's a skill that needs to be developed. The second one is, of course, passion. Without passion, you can't really to achieve success in such a situation. And the third one is development of empathy. Yeah, so to me, these three factors are the sort of make or break factors that leaders need to have in addressing this one. So passion, agility, and empathy. Yeah.
Thank you. Interesting. Anybody else? Rose, yes. Who is?
Pradeep, thank you very much. I like the agility bit, and I think to a certain extent it will be difficult to teach passion and empathy.
Yeah, I know.
I cannot imagine trying to write a curriculum to teach empathy.
No, it's not about, sorry, it's not about teaching passion, it's about how you drive passion among the organization. So I think this mainly about
I absolutely agree with you. I think leaders must have passion and empathy. If they do not have this too, they should not be sitting in leadership roles. I completely agree with you. But Prof, if I could just add two more things that I think perhaps even the first topic, we always start off with theories of leadership and things like that. Yeah. But to be honest, if I am to now develop a curriculum for leadership for ACAP, I would probably start off with two things: risk management and cost analysis benefit. Because I think these are really two crucial things that leaders will have to have, without which they cannot function as leaders in any environment, be it public or private. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, obviously, I'm all about listening to the students. And I think good leaders both listen to the students, listen to the staff, listen to the parents, listen to all the stakeholders, and then communicate their message clearly to all of those stakeholders. And I think that's even more important in a period of crisis. So I think, it's a simple message. It's communicate and it's listen to all of your stakeholders and respond to those stakeholders.
Okay.
Not rocket science, but I think it's very important in these times.
All right. Prof. Roslan, any comment?
Okay, thank you, Prof. Mostly, I think as a leader, we can imagine this unprecedented pandemic onslaught is something lesson to be learned. It's never been seen before, as far as we living today are concerned. The way we look at it is, we can imagine that this pandemic, we were not sure how many years to come, as our journey in a tunnel. In a normal life, we live outside the tunnel, but now we're living in a tunnel where we might see a glimpse of light at the end, but we still in the tunnel with a very, very restricted movement. But within the tunnel, with the restricted movement, we are building the inner strength. And then it's very, it is an irony if we try to hope to get out from the tunnel and hope things getting back to normal. I think how long the tunnel is, we don't know, but we are sure that when we come out from the tunnel, the situation going to be changed forever. Meaning to say, what we see is online is here to stay. It's the way forward. We in USM having difficulty in our CDAE, Center of Development and Academic Excellence, to quote unquote force our staff to use online. But with the pandemic, with no choice, they have to work their way out to improve the content so that we get the best from out of that. So in conclusion, we should have a mindset as a leader, then when we come up from the tunnel, the scenario is going to be totally changed. Now this is the time to build our strength, and then when the environment change, we are ready to face the challenge in the future as far as the higher teaching learning institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this there is an element of future readiness, in all this. Okay. Doria, do you have the question from our participants?
Let me share the screen. There are 3 questions only. So all from Facebook. Can you see it, Prof?
Yes, yes, okay. From Woon Ching Yong, to all panelists, yeah, what do you think will be a key leadership language to respond to all stakeholders, students, staff, and partners, post-COVID-19 pandemic? Or will it be just a phase all higher education institutions have to go through during this period? Anybody who likes to take up this one first?
Yeah, I can start with that. I mean, it's also kind of reflecting on the last question as well. I think, you know, both private and public institutions around the world are going to be extremely stretched financially, and their sustainability is being brought into question. And I think when the questioner talks about a key leadership language, I think they're going to need to communicate clearly the value to society of institutions and the value to their local community, because unless they can do that, then I don't think they will be persuaded of the sustainability in the long term. So I think for leaders, we've spoken about kind of internal issues, but they also need to look externally and be able to communicate to the powers that be the value to the society and also to the community, the local communities that they're within. Because during this pandemic, I guess some of those links with local communities have almost been broken, and they're going to need to rebuild those over time.
Yes, interesting. You're right in highlighting the fact that university gates are closed. No one to come in. So the community around is cut off from the usual activity in the universities. Not only we're building local community engagement, by the time this is over, we have to develop national and international partnership and connection all together again. It's tough, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Guy, for that insight into the future. There's a question from Woon Chin Yong from the Facebook. Anybody else want to come in on that? Panelists?
Prof. Moshidi, just to add a little bit, if I may, to what Guy has said. I think not only do we need to look at how we talk to outsiders, I think the pandemic probably gave us some courage, you know, as institutions ourselves. You know, we were not tested before in a way. I think the pandemic kind of put us through the fire. And a lot of us actually feel that we have come out, or we are coming out of it stronger. So the courage is not just to talk to our stakeholders, whether internal or external, in the sense of private, you know, partners or even students or staff, but also the courage to actually approach ministry from a different perspective, to, you know, to have that confidence and approach ministry, like what Pradeep said just now, to say, look, we can do it. You can trust us to do it, and we have sufficient data now to show you that you put us through the hardest time and we can still come out of it. Yes, we may be wounded, that we are still having our bandages around us or whatever, but yet we can come out of it stronger. So I think that is probably the language that leaders can take forward moving out of this pandemic. Yeah.
Thank you, Rose. A very clear message to the ministry. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, giving a chance during pandemic era, private institution has come a long way in trying to survive on their own without much regulation.
Sorry, Prof. I just want to add to that, not just private, but if you look at public, Prof. Roslan's example is really good. You know, they collected 1.5 million from staff, if I remember correctly. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's the realization that we cannot wait for the funding from the government. We have to do it ourselves. Yeah, the internal initiative was put in place, right, Prof. Roslan?
Yeah, not only that. I mean, once we collect and then we distribute, so distribution to the local community also involve the staff. So this is to show when it is the time for USM, because not only the pandemic hit USM, but also hit the society within or in the perimeter of the university. So we deploy our staff to go out and giving out you know, foods and whatnot. So this show where we raise to the occasion and respond as required. So to show our relevance when the time comes to help out.
Yes, it's an issue that we need not wait for the Ministry of Higher Education. There are things that we can do locally at our institution, right?
Yes, Prof. I think if I may just add, I think fully agree with what's been said by Ros and Prof. Ruslan and Guy. So, but I think the key thing is what we are trying to say to all stakeholders here is that I think this process of recovery requires a lot of out-of-the-box thinking at all levels, really doing things that we've never done before, and being given the latitude to do it for the interest of the recovery of the sector here. So I think that's important. For example, I mean, even in our case, we've had students who have been coming back, international students who've been coming back since January, and obviously they have to spend up to 10 days to 2 weeks in a quarantine center in a very miserable state, and not not very happy. So what we did, our staff, again out of the box, they said, okay, let's send them some goodie bags, a hamper of food and biscuits and tidbits and things like that, and so to keep their spirits up. So we did that, and as a university leadership, we supported it fully. All right, and we say, okay, let's go out. So people went out in their cars and dropped off food hampers at these quarantine centers, and this, the students actually appreciated that tremendously, right? And that goes a long way towards also sort of promoting Malaysia again as a friendly place for them to come in. So these are things that I'm trying to say. So at all levels, it's out of the box thinking that is required now, not going back to basic normal ways of doing things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next question from Samsul UMS. At the university level, which department should be responsible for planning and developing strategic plan and policies in ensuring that the university perform at its best during the COVID-19 pandemic? Anybody want to respond for this? Obviously, in USM, they have a special nerve center to deal with this. In other universities, Nottingham, APU?
Well, in our case, the senior leadership team across all functional areas, whether it's academic leadership and corporate leadership, were together, and that is basically everybody has to be responsible. We did not assign any particular one department or division to say, hey, you look after all these things. Everybody from the CEO and all the senior leadership team, the vice chancellor, the deputy vice chancellors, as well as the heads of the various divisions were together. We used to, during the pandemic, even meet every evening from 6 o'clock onwards and sometimes into the night. And even now today, we meet every week to actually think up of discuss strategies and policies, right? So I think it's no single department, as it were. It's pervasive throughout the university that we have ensured.
Okay. Rosalini, in the case of Nottingham?
Thank you, Prof. We are not very far from what Pardeep just shared. The senior management actually oversees strategic plan development, but I'm going to be a little bit disruptive, and I would say that I think that's the wrong approach. After years in leadership, I find that strategic plan just stays most of the time as documents at the higher level because there is no bottom-up approach to strategic plan. I would probably propose, maybe this is the right forum to propose, I'm not so sure if it is, but nonetheless, I would propose that strategic plan should actually be a bottom-up exercise. So the institution leadership should actually guide the different departments and units with the vision statement, the values of the university, as well as the mission statement, and then tell each department to come up with their strategic plan, which then is accumulated to develop the institutional strategic plan. So it should be a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach. We have been using top-down approach, and in most cases, it just becomes a document that gathers dust.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. I think, but I think what we were referring to, I think basically during a pandemic emergency period, you really need to drive things down very quickly. Yeah, so I think that was the interest. But I think going forward, long term, yes, the approach is absolutely valid. You really need to engage all levels of staff and even students, even in helping us to develop future strategies for, like I said, recovery and for future development of the institution. Yeah.
For the second question, I think Pardeep, you have addressed this earlier. Very interestingly, very interesting response to this. we have to be thinking out of the box. No more traditional practice in university activities, I guess. Anybody who wants to disagree with that? Panelists? New normal is about out of the box, right?
Yeah. I mean, can I just add to what I said earlier? I think when we moved very quickly to online learning, I think we had to be honest with ourselves to say that actually it wasn't really online learning. It was mainly remote teaching, just taking what we've been doing physically and just transforming it into a. So I think the students' expectations are only going to increase. As they get exposed more to what's happening out there in the world, students actually now know what true online learning should be. And so I think it is down to the universities to actually keep pushing up the bar, lifting the bar, and trying to find different and innovative ways to sort of deliver learning as interactively as possible, as immersively as possible with the students. I think that's important. Yeah. So technology plays a very important role there. Yeah.
Yeah, the digital area and IR will contribute a lot in this. Prof. Ruslan, you want to come in?
Thank you. So we still believe in blended learning concept, which is a mixture of university experience, students come and enjoy the environment, because we spend a lot. For example, like electricity bill alone, who spent 30 million a year prior to pandemic, which means we spend a lot on infra to provide the student with the experience that they learn from as per USM campuses are concerned. So when we say that we're moving towards digital era, we're not abandoning the physical contact, but we do it in a clear manner, in a blended learning. For example, now we're adopting, we allow students to come with a 50% capacity. For example, we can house like 10,000 students at one time. Before, we will do for 50% only, through the changing of the batch, student coming in, and once they finish with the lab, they go out and then will be replaced by other students. So each student will experience the face-to-face. But we also working hard on try to fully utilize the IR 4.0 or 5.0 or whatnot, in order to fully benefit from the online lecture or online learning. So we still believe that the experience that students experience from abroad, when they come to contact with the local people, this is the shared experience and values they're going to bring back to their country, and that's where you build up the collaboration in the future.
All right, thank you. The last question, Doria, is the data.
I think Prof. Zaini wants to come in and ask the question live. She's the chair. So
yeah, I salute. Okay, come on.
That's all right. I think it's there already. I'm just asking whether, based on the experience with the pandemic, do you think that higher education institutions have the data and info, or the big data, that they can use to rationalize and justify the decision making? And would this be one of the topics that will be useful to be taught, or to be used for training? The reason why I'm asking is that despite some of us using blended learning before the pandemic, but when the pandemic came, we didn't even know whether our students have the computer, have access to internet, and so on. We took it for granted. And who are the underprivileged, who has problems with all sorts of things. So a lot of the decisions, I think, need to be done on that. So what are your opinion on that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the data's out there. The big data is there. I think institutions have access to it. I think it's training them and training leaders how to use that big data, because we've got too much information, as you know, and we really need that individualized information to understand every student's needs. So the data is out there, and I think your suggestion in terms of a training program for leaders and indeed staff across institutions to understand how to use big data is a fantastic suggestion. Absolutely.
Thank you, Guy. We are almost reaching 12. Anybody, any panelists, any members of panelists want to say a few words before I conclude the session? But before that, Datuk Nurzaini, from the discussion, we have listened to Pardeep, who has introduced the 3R, recovery, reflection, and reform. Before this, the pandemic, we had the 3R. I can't remember what was the 3R. Respected,
relevance and referred.
Yes, now we have another 3R. The pandemic and post-pandemic 3R to override the pre-pandemic 3R. Yes, Datuk Nurzaini, can you
I
come in, please?
second that motion.
Replace
the 3R.
So it is the moderator's prerogative to introduce the new 3R here. Thank you, Pardeep, for introducing the new 3R in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. Okay, let me go around to the panelists. Any last word of wisdom from you?
I mean, if I just may start off, I think what we have learned most over the last 1 year is that we are all partners in this. Government, institutions, students, parents are all partners in this process of coping with the pandemic and enabling that we can come out stronger. And I think those are that's the key message that that we have actually all shared today. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else?
Prof, if I could come in, just to comment on what Prof. Ruslan and the others have actually mentioned about traditional practices and classrooms, and in classrooms. I think there is huge value in traditional practices still. What we have learned in post-pandemic is that we need to now have the new norm lens when we look at traditional practices, not replacing traditional practices with the new norms, but to look at our traditional practices, but using this lens with the eyesight that is more focused. I think that's really important, not just to get rid of that. And like what Guy said earlier, he talked about the social value of students coming to have on-campus experience or in-classroom learning. That is really still crucial as part of student experience. So traditional values still have traditional practices still has its value, but we need to now look at it with a new norm lens. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me summarize the whole discussion very briefly. I think the panelists have given us quite a lot for us to bring back and discuss. Very interesting presentation and discussion by the panelists, and the questions are very relevant indeed. There are implications, the lesson learned, there are implications for training requirements. In the past, I was involved in several training with ACAP. We did mention about future disruptions, but most of those disruptions that we're talking about are disruptions that bring in positive things like technology and all those and so on and so forth. We have never been in a position to imagine that disruption like pandemic. This is one occasion that training should include such risk assessment, such as pandemic, which is not only confined to Malaysia, it's a global thing. So everything is affected. That should be incorporated in the training system. Secondly, it's about governance arrangement. In the past, the Ministry of Higher Education thinks that they are overpowerful with respect to private and public higher education. So now they discover that there are other agencies more powerful than them, and they had to listen to the other agencies. So the relationship between Ministry of Higher Education and universities are very much affected by the existence of other more powerful agencies that have implication for the higher education system. So what Pradeep has said, that there need to be reform that reform should include what are the likely scenarios in a pandemic that we have. What kind of arrangement between public institution, private institution, with the ministries and with MKN, the ministries of Home Affairs, and so on and so forth. So it is not just the Ministry of Higher Education. It's become very complicated, very complex. So in future, we need to have the arrangement properly designed in order to deal with any eventual pandemic. We can respond very quickly. In that context, we have higher education institutions who did take in very positive initiative while waiting for the Ministry of Higher Education to put in place their initiative. The good thing is the MQA has, through their circulars and so forth, giving back the Senate the power to decide on the offering of courses, how courses could be conducted, and so on and so on. So pandemic has opened up that autonomy box into exploring what the universities can do without those agencies hovering over them in terms of all these activities. Interestingly, in the public higher education institution, with this pandemic, nobody is talking about autonomy, right? Dato' Nur Zaini, at your university, are they talking about autonomy? Very silent now, right? Yes, everybody realized that this is the time that we have to put aside those institutional autonomy in the context of a national emergency, a global emergency such as this. So academics are very silent now about those autonomy, as we have said. Maybe one or two, but obviously there are more urgent concerns. And lastly, it's about the reforms, yeah, the global reform in terms of the arrangement, the acts that we have, which has been delayed for so many years. Probably this is the best time. Pardip, your future plan for private higher education institution has not touched much on those blurring areas between public and private higher education institutions. So yes. Pandemic situation, the predicament we are in now could bring back those arguments in trying to bring a standard or one regulation for both public institutions in certain areas, which ministry may not interfere. For example, in the past, only certain institutions can offer online learning. Some are not allowed to. So they're not ready for any online opportunities because of pandemic. So they're struggling. So probably in the future, all institutions should be in position to offer face-to-face, online, blended learning, thinking that anytime in the future we are faced with another pandemic. So everybody will be ready either to go online, remote learning, and so on and so forth. So there should be flexibility in terms of offering the mode of delivery. Do you think that that's one of the reform? Right now, Rosalini, if I'm not wrong, or you can indicate to me, some institutions are allowed to offer online. Public institutions, mostly face-to-face. Open learning institution, they cannot offer face-to-face. So during pandemic, they're okay because they're familiar with online. But public institution, they're caught in the bind because they don't have the facilities, they don't have the training, and so on and so forth in order to offer. So there should be, what Pradip said, there should be a flexibility in terms of this offering. So the MQA, the ministry, should be in position to look at this. And thirdly, the mental health. Guy, you have indicated that. Prof. Roslan, you have indicated that. Good Pradip and Rosalie. To what extent, and Dato' Nur Zaini have raised the issue, to what extent we have the data, the complete data on the mental health of our staff in the pandemic era? In the past, we're happy to work from home. Now, everybody is resenting. They want to be in campus. They have enough of working from home. So what is the mental the mental health status of our staff. Fatigue, webinar fatigue, online fatigue. Yeah, Prof. Ruslan, you have presented a good direction in terms of data. Probably if you can populate those database, we should be in position to assess the mental health status of USM staff during pandemic era. Yes, Prof. Ruslan. Yeah.
Perhaps I would like to add that that on the 15 March of 2021 in the Journal Career Future. This is done in US in Europe. 70% they've done the study among 1,200 academics.
Yeah.
So 70% complaining that they have stress, as compared to only 20% in 2019.
Yes.
So this is the way forward. How do we want to apply the study in our academics in the country?
Yes. I think more institutions should go that. So in order not to add more stress to you people, I think it's time for us to stop. We have gone for 3 hours almost. Very interesting, I must say. It's very interesting. Thank you to all the panelists for that delightful and interesting insight into your own experience, your institutional experience, and the way you look at how things will be moving in the past.
Prof, some announcements to make.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else to add on? Sorry for cutting you short.
And
okay. Now
you didn't take any photo yet.
Yeah, about to announce that. But before that particular announcement, thank you so much to all the panelists and the moderator. Prof. Moshidi has summarized the points that were discussed very well. Now, for all participants today, if you would like to have a look at the slides, this applies to both on Zoom and Facebook. If you'd like to request for slides, please take a photo of this particular set of emails. Write to them once the panelists are ready with modified slides. They will be able to send a copy to you after the session. All right, so that's one announcement to make. The second announcement from the sponsor, ICAP. Can we have a group photo or virtual photo where all the cameras are open and we are taking the photo? Dr. Yazrina, somebody from ICAP is taking the photo, right?
Yeah. Somebody from ICAP, where's Yazrina? Yazrina. Doria.
Yep.
There'll be certificate of participation, right, Doria?
Yes.
I pass this question to Dr. Yazrina for answering.
Yes, there is. So there is certificate for those who has registered. Basically, we will work that out with Dr. Ross, with Pendapat, all right, to identify who are the participants. And I request for the others, there are a few who has not switched on their cameras. Even the participants, if you can switch on your cameras, that would be very good, very helpful, okay? There are 2 frames basically on the Zoom, yeah? That we shall, just let me see. Okay, almost everyone. There's still a few. All right.
Yes,
okay.
adjust your tudung properly.
Adjust your tudung, put on some lipstick or whatever that you need to do. All right, let me see. There is, okay, almost all. Dr. Yarina, if you're there, please do switch on your video. Dr. Irene as well, I see some names, yeah, okay. And then, let me see, okay, Cik Zabah, can you take my assistance from ICAP? I will do so the same, but Cik Zabah just a backup, okay, to take the photos. All right, can I go on the first, wait, hold on, there are a few more. Dr. Audley, there's I do not know, sebab tak ada nama doktor ke apa kan, so I tak sure. Ada a few more je yang tak punya kamera.
kalau ada.
All right, just bear with me a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to go on the first frame. So you have to smile on both because I do not know you are in which frame basically. Okay, so the first frame, let's hold on. Yeah, just hold on, just the participants, yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, the second frame.
Nombor.
Smile.
Dia berislam. 1, 4.
Okay.
Dia berislam pula, Beb. 1, 4, 2, 5,
Okay.
2, 5,
So thank you very
6,
much.
0.
Got the photos, nanti I'll share with Dr. Ross, the team. Right? So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you,
Doris.
Prof. Rashidi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, well done.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Adib and
Bye-bye.
I thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you all the speakers, panelists, participants. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.